We are 10 minutes away from the top of the hour. Welcome, everybody, to the pre-show of today's 2/20/1202. That is our A+ Core 2 study group. We are in the final minutes of making sure that all of the video is set up properly, recording is going. I guess we could put our information there on where you can go to put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion. I'm not even sure how to describe that, but there it is, because it is right here. There it is. That's what it looks like. Let's close this up right there. We can pause this right over here. We'll do this right there. Hey, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. We are ready today. We have all new questions for you. You can submit questions for the second hour. If you have questions for me, you can submit those at any time from that same link that you see behind me there, professormesser.com/QA. We have a lot of really good questions to go through today, and I don't remember them because I did them over the weekend. So I've now forgotten everything from, 5 days ago. That's sort of how it goes for me right now. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of moving parts, but we're good. We have all questions today that are from the Core 2 exam. I've got a lot to go through. And of course, your questions. If there's something you want to ask, something that has been bothering you, something that you really want to know about this certification or technology or the industry or the weather, you can always ask by using that same link you see on your screen. Now, also, instead of going to that link, you could go to professormesser.com/live. And on the live page, I also have the video, the chat, and the Vevox voting system on there as well. So everything's on one page now. I don't know if that makes it easier or it doesn't make it easier. I don't know. Either way, though, it's there. You can use it if you'd like it. We've got something there. I need to change the format. It needs to be kind of a more streamlined format. I'd love to make it in something sort of YouTube-ish where you got a video and the chat down the side, and then you've got this other thing on the bottom. We're getting there. We have our best people on it, so to speak. Maybe not our best because I'm involved, but everything else is our best. We will figure that part of it out. There is, I like doing close to the end of the week. I like the last live stream of the week because then I can kind of get the live stream things done. And then I go back into sort of content creation mode where I'm just in here, on the keyboard with nobody else around. Would you recommend studying AI security engineering? I have no idea what that is. I have no idea how we're using those terms today. You have to be more specific as to what in the world something like that would look like. I can guess, and generally speaking, IT security probably is the one place where the most common definition of how we're using the term AI these days would fit, because you have so much data to go through that humans simply can't sift through it. Now, to be fair, we've been doing this already for years. We just kind of stuck an AI sticker on it and said, it's AI. No, we've been doing this for a long time. You have all of this information in an enormous database. How do you correlate that information? How do you sift through it? How do you find the needle in the haystack? How do you find somebody trying to get into your network? Do you use heuristics? Do you use a signature? Do you use all of those? And we've been doing this for a very long time. Now we're just sort of calling it AI. So I suspect when you say AI security engineering, that's really what we're talking about. How do we take this very large amount of data that is just overwhelming for a human? There's no way we would be able to look through that and be able to find what we want. We can pick out specific reports, of course. We can say, show me every authentication that has failed in the last hour, and it will show you that. But unless you have something looking through the data constantly and being able to correlate across very diverse systems and then be able to present you with, hey, this looks funny. This is something I found that was interesting. Here's something you should look at. That would be a perfect use of that. So there you go. I came up with one good thing that we could use. Again, not consumer-facing AI, but certainly sort of a big data AI, which is, as I've always said, I think that's where we're going to get the biggest bang for this investment into AI that these companies have made, that these very intelligent and very directed CEOs who know absolutely how to handle their money have created this multi-billion-dollar, tens of billions of dollars of investment so that it can look through the data and provide that information. I think we see it more on the computer science side is probably the best one. I think the one that we would see is more of a is something that can program for us, something that can develop applications for us, something that can put together a script for us so we don't have to write the script. I like writing the scripts myself so that I know what they're doing. I don't like editing someone else's copy or someone else's code, but some people are fine with that, or they just don't have the ability to write the script. Have this write the script for you, and I hope it works and won't delete anything. That part is probably working the best because what it's doing is finding all these vulnerabilities, all of these problems with software, with operating systems, you've seen the number of vulnerabilities in the last 6 months is skyrocketing. We're identifying vulnerabilities we've never identified before through the use of these types of tools. Another great example, there's all this data. How do we look through all this data? Humans can't do it. The machines can do it much better than we can. Those types of things are a perfect use and fits well into the augmented intelligence, the artificial something. We're sort of just using the term so generically now, it's almost lost any meaning. But maybe that's on purpose. Maybe that's what they want us to do. They prefer that. Then it can't help but be a benefit because you'll find that one instance. You go to the Home Depot and, oh, look, it's a ladder now with AI. Oh, it's a box of nails now with AI. I don't know what's going on anymore. I don't know. We're just going to put it on everything. And eventually they'll fall off. We'll get the real AI things, and that's what we'll stick with. But the marketing folks are working overtime right now, and good for them. We're paying them to do all of that. So we'll figure out how it works. The way I tell is the only time I ever see some things pop up in my Reddit feed is when I see that big data AI stuff. And that's exciting to me. I like the idea of just taking tons of data, putting it into a big pot, and then finding the secrets that are inside of that. I think it's a lot of fun. No, we haven't gotten started yet. 3 minutes until we get started. This is just me, blah, 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 blah. I look forward to your cards and letters. Whenever I give an opinion about technology, whatever it is, I don't give a lot of opinions about technology. I try to be very balanced with it. Here's what's good about it. Here's what's bad about it. But of course, people tend to only hear what they want to hear when you're talking about those things. And so I end up getting a lot of interesting emails at the end of a live stream from folks who are explaining to me just how wrong I am. Well, more power to you. Knock yourself out. Doesn't bother me. The part that I always find funny is the ones that are sending it to me, but it was put through AI and then sent to me as a fully AI created piece of email. Like, okay, that's maybe you really don't think this. Maybe you told something else to make you think that. It's one of the challenges I have. I'm getting so many emails these days that are, you can tell in their formatting that this is not something you wrote. And then I have to think, is this real? Is it a real person? And that's the problem I have, especially in the internet, when you're dealing with finances, you're dealing with funds that are being transferred. It's important to know who you are working with. It's important to know who your customers are and who you're dealing with and people who you're buying things from. And if it's all automated, how are you supposed to know that? It's making it a little bit more challenging. Maybe I should ask the AI if that's an AI. Problem solved. What was I thinking? There we go. It was so easy. I'm glad we have this technology so we can ask the technology if it is that technology. You've seen those. You've seen the videos of people putting one AI engine communicating with another AI engine, and they just go back and forth all day. Good for us. What a technology we have created. What a wonderful place we are with this. This will all sort of work itself out. We're sort of seeing that right now. We're sort of seeing the changes in the industry as things kind of shake themselves out. And the stuff that's working, we keep. The stuff that's not, you throw it away, and nobody ever remembers it anyway. 15 seconds before we get started. That was a quick 10 minutes, everybody. I think it's about time. Let's check one last check. Those screens look good. These screens look good. I think we can do a live stream. I think we're ready for a presentation. What do you think? Look, turn to 12. It's time to check our keynote. There it is. Green light is good. Go. Go, go. Go, go, Power Ranger. Did I click the green button? Oh, it didn't like that at all. Let's try that. It's a different presentation now. There we go. That's much better. That's a lot. Okay. I think we can do a live stream then. Are you guys ready? Me too. Let's get this thing started. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2026 Professor Messer Core 2. That is our A+ study group specific to the 220-1202 exam. This is the live stream, the presentation, the show, where you will get questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And then you, in real time, if you are indeed here live, will be able to vote on those questions, and you'll be able to see just how much you might know about these topics. We have quite a bit to go through today, and I want you to join us by heading over to this link right here, professormesser.com/QA. If you are already on our website watching this at professormesser.com/live, then you already have this on your screen. You just scroll down a little bit and you'll see it. But if you're watching somewhere else, or if you are on my site live, you can always do this too. Pop open a new browser window, head over to professormesser.com/QA, and you will be able to answer questions from that link. What questions am I talking about, do you ask? I am so glad you asked that. We have a set of questions we will be doing today, and just to test, just to see if you're able to get in and answer these questions, I have a question that we did in a previous study group just to see how much you might remember. Or maybe, if you've never seen the question before, how much you know. We refer to this as our rewind question, and it's going to be a good way to test how well we do this. I would also like to remind you, as we are doing our questions and answers today, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link that you have on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Our question, our rewind question of the month is, a system administrator notices a Windows workstation is randomly encountering a blue screen with the stop code kernel mode heap corruption. Which of the following resolutions would best apply to this issue? How can we fix this? Would it be roll back a recently installed hardware driver, disable the spooler service, run a full disk defragmentation, run startup repair, or remove the paging file? One of these will be the one that would best apply to this particular issue. Let's see if you know what the answer is. If you do, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. So you have a few things to go through. We will come back to this question in just a moment. So don't go anywhere. We will find out the answer to this one as soon as we get through a couple of extra things here at the beginning. I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is something that we do every month, and if you've not seen our live streams before, it's something we really like to do. Like to have you here and have the interactive Q&A back and forth. So thank you so much for joining us. When we're not doing one of these live streams, you can find us on YouTube. Of course, every one of our courses is available to watch for free online. There's no registration involved, I guess, other than the YouTube registration that might be there. There's nothing you have to do on our site. There's nothing hidden behind a paywall. There's nothing that we're sneaking away that you only get part of it. Nope, you get everything. You get the entire courses. They are available on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have a daily A+ pop quiz question. You can find that at professormesser.com/X/Instagram and /LinkedIn, or I'll put it in your email inbox. You can find the links to those on the main page of professormesser.com. And we've got a lot of other places online that you might find us. If you would like to find us on your favorite social media site, just go to professormesser.com/ the name of the place, /Facebook, for example. We'll take you to our page over on Facebook. It's another one of those that try to make it a little bit easier to find us wherever we happen to be. You want to also listen in sometime during this first hour. I'm going to give you instructions on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category continuing education unit credit. That is referred to as a CEU. This is something you would use to help renew your certification. Some third parties use it to prove more of an ongoing education type process. So if you are someone who is working to renew your certification, you might want these CEUs. That might be how you are renewing your cert. If you don't have your certification yet, this may not apply to you, but listen in anyway. I can always send you the email, even if you don't end up using it. We'll give you those instructions sometime during this first hour. Just listen out for that. Today, we're going to be talking about the A+ Core 2 exam. This is specifically the 220-1202 exam, 1202. That's the version of it. This is also referred to, for some reason, as version 15. It probably is version 15, but you have to know that those two are linked because those numbers don't make any sense. This exam was released on March the 25th of 2025, which means we estimate the retirement for this will be sometime around September of 2028. That gives you plenty of time to study with the current set of exam objectives. You don't have to worry about the exam changing. You don't have to worry about the exam going away. You are exactly where you should be. As long as your study materials are specifically marked as the 220-1201 and the 220-1202, you are studying from the right materials. This exam or this certification itself requires that you pass two exams. One is the Core 1 exam, and you need to score 675 on a scale from 100 to 900 to pass that first exam. For the second exam, you have to score a little bit better. You have to score a 700 on that same scale between 100 and 900. And regardless of what exam versions there are, and regardless of what retirement dates there might be for a set of exams, once you pass those two exams, none of those dates apply to you anymore. The only thing that applies to you is your certification is good for 3 years after passing your exam. And if you want to extend that another 3 years, there is a renewal process where you can extend it another 3 years. And then you can extend it another 3 years. And then you can extend, you get the idea. You can keep this as long as you would like, as long as you renew every 3 years. This is also an exam that has a number of different topics on it. We're going to be talking about Core 2 today. So all of our questions today will be based on operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. We will go through many questions today, and we'll try to mix them up so you get a little bit from all of those as we go through these. Now, you'll also notice that this live stream is available for replay immediately after we're done. You can go back and watch our entire archive of live streams. They are available on our YouTube channel in the playlist section. But we also put these available on social media, on streaming websites, so you can watch the video. But I also create a podcast downloadable version of this, an audio-only version that is distributed in a podcast format. So if you have a favorite podcast listening program, you can add it by going to professormesser.com/podcast. You can also find it on a number of very popular podcast lists, where you can choose from those. Or maybe you're on a streaming media service like Spotify. You can simply search for Professor Messer on Spotify, and you'll find all of the podcast distributions there as well. Might help you if you're driving in the car, you're working out, can't look at a screen, but something that can help you study for this as you're doing perhaps something else. Also want to let you know that we have on our YouTube video description, we have a number of timestamps that will appear about a day after we're done. It takes about a day because we have our marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this on the replay. Hi, Lori. She's going through this process and marking down everything we do and when we do it and creating for you an archive of that. It's on all of our study groups so that you can find the information that you need that much faster. If that's something that you like and that you have used, make sure you give Lori a heart in the chat. Let her know that you appreciate the hard work that she is doing. I sure do. And it's something I think has helped all of us as we're going through and trying to find things. Helps me find things in the archives when I'm looking through them. So thanks so much, Lori. Next on our list, I want to remind you that when we are done here, we are also going to be over on our Discord. We have, I think we're up to over 70,000 people that have joined our Discord server. It's ridiculous. Thank you so much for joining. There are a lot of people there. We get thousands of people every month that are in our Discord studying for their A+ certification, their Network Plus certification, their Security Plus certification, and others. Some people just come to hang out and talk tech, which is also a great thing to do. And we have a whole channel set up just for general conversation, if that's what you'd like to do. There's a lot of other hidden little features in there. You can create your own rooms for studying. You can invite people in. You can lock the room. You can manage the room. You can make it open. You have complete control. We give you the ability to study how you would like to over on our Discord. Please come and join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your A+ exam, and unfortunately, they make you pay for these things. You have to go in and actually pay to take your certification. That's how most industry certifications work. But if you come to ProfessorMesser.com and you happen to live in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can get your vouchers to pay for this exam at a less expensive cost than going directly to the CompTIA website. Sure, you could go over to CompTIA's website and pay full price. Not sure why you would do that when the exact same vouchers are right here. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers to get an official CompTIA voucher from a platinum partner of CompTIA, and that would be me. Now, not only do we get your voucher for a discount, we also give you something you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook where I have documented all of the tips and tricks that I've used through the years to pass these CompTIA exams, whether it's something during the study process or tips and tricks and strategies you can use during the exam itself to be able to perhaps get a few extra points. That's something that is just included for free when you purchase a voucher or you purchase one of our success bundles. We don't sell that separately. That is the only way to get that. So that is definitely an exclusive. You can have a look at that over on our website, ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier, which is a system administrator notices a Windows workstation is randomly encountering a blue screen with the stop code kernel mode heap corruption. Which of the following resolutions would best apply to this issue? Would it be to roll back a recently installed hardware driver? Would it be to disable the spooler service? Would it be to run a full disk defragmentation? Would it be to run startup repair? Or should we remove the paging file? What should we do? Well, let's find out what you think we should do. We're going to close our poll. And we have a bit of a mix. We have, although we did get a majority, 57% of you say you would roll back a recently installed hardware driver. 35% of you, though, say you'd run startup repair is what you would do. 6% said to run a full disk defragmentation. 2% said to disable the spooler service. And then 0% said to remove the paging file. So this is an interesting one because it's a random problem. It's just popping up at different times during the day. And the error message is not very clear. Kernel mode heap corruption. I think we're going to have to Google that one to figure out what that actually is. And even then, it may not give you the information you need to understand where the problem might be and how to solve it. Well, if you're getting a blue screen, then you should probably just step through the process of trying to troubleshoot blue screen problems. This is we call it a BSOD, a blue screen of death. The technical term of this is a Windows stop error. That is how most of these organizations will refer to it. And if it's an older version of Windows, it might be this weird text-based dark blue color, which is why we call it the blue screen of death. These days, it has more of a pastel tone, more of a lighter blue, kind of a nicer error, kind of make you feel better about the fact that your system just crashed, and you get a little frown face. I'm so sorry that your system isn't feeling well. One of the things you can do if you get a blue screen of death when you're starting your system up is to perhaps use a last known good option, use a system restore, or roll back a driver. Now, our problem with this question wasn't about the startup process. So doing something that would fix the startup is not really where our problem is happening. Our problem is occurring randomly throughout the day, not during the startup. So perhaps not something we'd worry about. Reseat or removing the hardware might be an option, except we're not even sure where to start at this point. Or we could just run a hardware diagnostics. Maybe the problem is not the software that we're running. Maybe it's the hardware that we're running. Well, if you look at all of those different options and you think about where do we even begin, one of the best places to start with any type of error is to have the smallest amount of change on the system. And ripping apart the system and pulling out hardware and putting it back in again is something that can fix problems, especially if it is a loose connection. They don't tend to be things that happen on their own. We screw down all of these pieces in our motherboard. Sometimes it's a single board and there's no moving parts on it. In some cases, there isn't even anything to reseat. Maybe the RAM, maybe the memory that we have in the system. In this particular case, though, our issue was that we encountered a blue screen on a random basis. It's not happening when we start up the computer. It's happening randomly throughout the day. And for that reason, I'm going to go with the 57% of you that said roll back a recently installed hardware driver. Of all of the options made available to us, that is the only one that best applies to this particular issue. 35% of you said run startup repair, but as I mentioned, our problem isn't happening during startup. There's nothing to repair during the startup process. In fact, maybe running startup repair would cause it to do something bad to the startup process. If it's not broke, we don't need to fix it. So startup repair is not our issue. So that would not be what we would choose. Running a full disk defragmentation. If the disk does have a defragmentation, and it is a traditional spinning hard drive, then you'll find that maybe it takes a little bit longer to load data, or it takes a little bit longer to save data. In some cases, that delay is not really perceivable, but as a drive becomes more and more and more fragmented, and you have much larger files that you might be dealing with, it might be something that you notice. And running a defragmentation will make things much more efficient when it comes to retrieving or storing data on the drive. But it wouldn't cause a blue screen. That's not the issue that we're getting. A kernel mode heap corruption that's a blue screen and a stop code. Defragmentation doesn't cause your system to crash. It only causes your system to speed up after you'd run the defrag. So it's more of an efficiency change than something that would be causing an issue. So that would not be the right answer. 2% said to disable the spooler service. That is the service that keeps all of your print jobs and sends them to the printer as the printer is printing them out. We don't have any problems with printing. The error message that we got had nothing to do with printing. Doing anything with the print spooler is just throwing out things against the wall and hoping that they stick. That's not what we're looking to do. And 0% said remove the paging file. How do we know the paging file isn't our problem? Well, we don't necessarily, but the stop code that we got doesn't mention a paging file. This is happening randomly throughout the day. Probably not the number one thing that's on our list. Since this is something that is happening randomly and it is a blue screen and it hasn't happened before, we can assume, based on this question, rolling back a recently installed hardware driver would be the best answer, especially if you recently installed a hardware driver. This is the question you almost always have to ask yourself whenever you get these weird problems, especially random problems. What recently has changed? Did you install new software? Did you install new hardware? Where's there a new driver? Where's there a Windows update? What changed? Something on that system has changed, and now we have a blue screen. If nothing had changed, if we had not installed hardware, if we did not have anything that was installed for new applications, if we did not do a Windows update and we started getting these blue screens, maybe then we'd look more at the hardware. Maybe we think, maybe I'm having a memory problem. Maybe there's an issue with the hardware itself. Maybe we should run some hardware diagnostics. But since we know, based on the answers, that there was a recently installed hardware driver, that's where I'm going to go first. And that's where we would often find these types of stop codes, especially one that affects the kernel of the operating system itself. 57% of you chose roll back a recently installed hardware driver, and 57% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well, that brings us now to a new question of the month. And as many of you know, on our live streams, our first new question of the month is not a multiple choice question. No, not like the one we just had where there was a question and then multiple answers you could choose from. Even if you didn't know the answer, you had a 20% chance of getting it right. On your exam, you might get 4 individual answers, which means your chance goes up to 25%. Well, CompTIA wants to make it a little bit harder on you than that. They want to see if you really know your stuff. So they have a section at the beginning of their exam. You will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. CompTIA refers to these as performance-based questions, and a loose definition of those is anything that's not multiple choice. So it could be a fill in the blank. It could be a matching question. It could be a drag and drop question. It could be something where we put things in a particular order. Or maybe they put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function, which is what I'm going to ask of you today. This is a Linux performance-based question, and this Linux performance-based question is asking you to perform 3 different tasks. Our first task is, in this view, you can kind of see I've got a it is difficult to see, I realize. device. We'll go a little bit closer. We have in our documents folder on our Linux machine a file. This file is called appmessage.log. That is the file that is currently there. And I'm asking you to change the name of that file from appmessage.log to searching.log. How would you do that? Again, if you think you know the answer, you want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put these answers into the chat room. Don't put any hints in the chat room. The second thing I want you to do with this Linux command prompt is find all instances of the word error in the file. See if you know where error might be. Error might be inside that error file. So the last thing I'd like you to do, once you've done all of that, in an effort to really prove you know how to work at the command prompt, we're going to nuke it. We're going to delete the file from the file system. That's exactly what we would like to do. Get rid of it. So we start with a file. We change the name of it. We search through it. We delete it. What commands do we type in at a Linux command prompt to be able to do that? That is what I am asking. And then we're going to try it ourselves once we're done. We'll do some live Linux command line work here in a moment. But in the meantime, you could submit what you think the right answers would be for those 3 questions by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. As you're probably aware on the 1202 exam, there's a lot of Linux commands on that. We're doing 3. I think there might be 20 on the command line prompt. There's a lot. It seems that way. We'll have to count them up later on. We'll have to see exactly how many Linux commands there happen to be. That'll give me something to sift through when we go to looking at the official exam objectives. That will tell us exactly what the commands are and how many of them we need to memorize. Not only on the Linux commands, there's also a ton of Microsoft commands in there as well for Windows. So we have Windows commands we need to know. We have Linux commands we need to know. We also need to know a little bit of Mac OS in there. There's also references to Chrome OS and others. It's a lot of stuff to look through. It's a lot of things to be able to sift through to figure out the details. So maybe you know what some of these might be. See if you're familiar with these options, with these command lines, and see exactly what you think this might be. Submit your answers at any time by going to professormesser.com/QA. Whenever I've started getting into the world of operating systems, I worked a lot with Windows, of course. There's a lot of work that I did in Unix at the time. This was before Linux was really incredibly popular, or even it was a thing. It may not have even been a thing yet. But I did a lot with Sun OS, that does take me back, and Solaris, which eventually what Sun OS turned into. So I worked a lot at the command prompt. That sort of takes me even further back. There was quite a bit done with mainframes before that. Then we go to kind of the system operating systems for Linux, for Windows and others, and work through those. And once you get to that point, you can really start differentiating between what is Windows, what is Linux, what is Mac OS, what are the differences, and perhaps even more importantly, what are the similarities between all of those. We always have arguments online about this operating system is better. No, this operating system is better. No, this one really is better. In reality, all of them are good. We just have different strengths and weaknesses depending on what you want to be able to do with that operating system. So it's important to know all of these. And I will tell you, the more you know about all of these different operating systems, the better technologist you're going to be, the better troubleshooter you are going to be. And you'll start to see a lot of similarities between these operating systems that you can kind of take the knowledge you learned in Windows and apply some of that knowledge into the world of Linux. The Linux people hate it when I say things like that, but it's absolutely true because there's a lot of similarities between. A lot of what we're going to do here has some similarities, also has some differences. So let's step through each one of these options on the command line. The first thing is I want to be able to change the name of the file from appmessage.log to searching.log. Well, let's see if I have a command prompt here that we could look through. I guess I do have to put in the correct password. That's the thing I'll have to put in first. So I do have this very screen available. There it is. So here is our Linux command prompt. We'll move it up a little bit so you can see it a little bit better over my head here at the bottom. And we're here in my documents folder. I did an ls command, which is listing the files in the file system. the objects in the file system. In Linux, everything is a file system object. And then you have some flags I put on the end of this to show me an extended view of this. So I can see permissions, I can see the owner, I can see the group name, I can see the size of the file, and I can see the name, along with the date and time, the name of the file. So in this case, we have our app-message.log. The question I had was to change the name from app-message.log to searching.log. Well, in Windows, we would use maybe the copy command to be able to do that. We don't have that available in Linux. And in fact, what we're trying to do is change the name. We could use, I guess in Windows, we could do the rename command to rename the name of the file, but we don't have that in Linux either. In Linux, we are going to move the file, which may not seem very intuitive if you come from the Windows world, but if you ever work in Linux, there's very much an object-based perspective to the operating system. As I mentioned earlier, in Linux, everything is a file system object. So we're going to move using the mv command, and we're going to move app-message.log. I'm just going to type app and hit tab, and it's going to auto-complete for me because I like to be lazy that way. I want to move from a file name to a file name. So I'm moving from app-message.log, and what did I want to make that? Searching.log. Had to type that one in. It can't auto-complete what's in my brain yet. Maybe someday we'll get there. So let's try that. We'll move app-message.log to searching.log. I'll hit enter. It doesn't really say anything. It doesn't give us any feedback. It doesn't tell us anything. But if I perform another ls command, you'll see what previously named app-message.log is now named searching.log. So we were successful in changing the name from app-message.log to searching.log using the mv command. That's exactly what we used. All right, well, if we got that one right, we can move to the next one. And the next task we would like to perform is find all instances of the word error in the file. I want to see in that file name, did we get any errors? How would we know? Well, I guess we could list everything that's in the file. We could do a more command. We could do a cat command. There's a lot of different ways to view the file if you're in Linux, and maybe we should do that. We'll come back over to our live Linux. I'm going to cat this searching, and that's a command to concatenate, and it's commonly used to take multiple files and combine them into a single file. In this case, if you just have a single cat to a single file and you don't specify an output, it puts it on the screen. So you'll see a lot of stuff just went by. I sometimes would prefer using the more command to do the same thing. So it'll go a page at a time, but you can see here, is there word error anywhere in here? Is there pages and pages? How are you supposed to know? How am I supposed to know if there's anything in here that has the word error? I want to find every line that has the word error in it. So the way that we're going to do that is to use another command that's also listed in your exam objectives called grep. That grep command will search through a text file, and it will show you every line of the text file that has that inside of it. That is going to be incredibly important for hunting down information hidden in a Linux log file somewhere. So the thing that I am looking for in this command, I want to grep, and I need to specify what that grep is going to be. Is it going to be for a word? In this case, it is, and I want to find the word error, and I want to find that word error in the file searching.log. That's it. That is all you have to do to search through enormously large files and identify that tiny little needle that might be hidden inside of that haystack. It also is very, very fast. So you can go through gigabytes and gigabytes and gigabytes of data in a matter of seconds, and it will find that information. Let's hit enter, and there's every line inside of that document that has the word error in it. In fact, I'll make it a little bit wider so we can really see it better. Look at the ones that we have here. So in that entire file, it shows us, maybe there's 15 or 20 different lines that came up that has that word error, and you can see it even highlights it on the screen in a color, so you could see that was the word we wanted. So this might show you that there were no lines with the word error inside of it, or it might show a number of them and gives me timestamps. I can go back and do more troubleshooting. It's a lot we can do with that view. So how quick was that? We were able to search through all of that information and find that. We could almost call that AI, couldn't we? It wasn't. It's just grep. That's all it is. Grep is the new AI. We're going to turn grep into a brand new thing. So pretty quick to be able to have that. So now let's go to the third option or the third task we want to perform, which is to delete the file from the file system. Delete that searching.log file. There are a number of different ways to do this, of course, but I'm going to show you the one that you need to know for the exam. In the Windows world, you would use the delete command, del. In Linux, we don't have a del command. It's a little bit different, but similar functionality. We're going to remove inside of Linux. And instead of typing the word remove, the command is an rm command. In this case, I want to remove searching.log. We'll hit enter. Again, like many things in Linux, it just gives you a prompt back. If nothing went wrong, then it just gives you a prompt and doesn't tell you anything. Did it really delete it though? Let's do another search. We'll do a list to show everything in there. Nothing is listed now in that particular folder, and our task has been successfully completed. That is exactly the option that we wanted to have. So changing the name from appmessage.log to searching.log meant that we used the mv command to provide that. The next task was to search through that particular file, searching.log, with the grep command, and we're going to grep the word error and then specify the file name, in this case, searching.log, and it shows us every instance of the word error in that file. And then lastly, we wanted to delete that searching.log file. And in Linux, the delete command is the remove command, rm. We want to rm searching.log, and as you can see, it's now gone. We got rid of it. It is completely missing, and that is what we were hoping to see working through all of those different options at the Linux command prompt. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more to think about. I think if you're somebody who is trying to work through the details of Linux and understand all of these commands, running a very basic overview of each of these commands can really help you solidify in your brain, stick it in your noggin, exactly how that command works and what type of output you would expect to see. So those are the ones that we use. Those are the ones that are most important. And hopefully you're kind of familiar now with some of the options available in Linux. And if you aren't, I would highly recommend that you have a good look at the exam objectives and you study each one of those Linux commands. There are a lot of them there to know, and you're going to need to know them for your exam. So hopefully that gives you an idea for those. I think that might help quite a bit as you go through and work with Linux, Windows, or really anything at a command prompt. It can be very useful. Let's now shift gears back from our performance-based question of the month. Let's now go back to our multiple choice questions and see how well you do with this one. The next question on our list is this one that asks, an office is replacing several old uninterruptible power supplies and has accumulated a large number of heavy internal batteries. Which of the following would be the best way to manage this battery collection? Would it be to add it to the weekly garbage pickup, put it in the building's recycling bin, ship to a hazardous waste location, incinerate at a waste-to-energy plant, or store in a well-ventilated room? Now we have a few things to work on here. The question again asks, an office is replacing several old uninterruptible power supplies and has accumulated a large number of heavy internal batteries. Which of the following would be the best way to manage this battery collection? Would it be to add it to the weekly garbage pickup, put it in the building's recycling bin, ship it to a hazardous waste location, incinerate at a waste-to-energy plant, or store in a well-ventilated room? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to use the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in that particular answer. Now, obviously, that link won't be available if you are watching this on a replay, but you can follow along with us and maybe even consider joining us on the next live stream. You can always check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar to know when the next live stream is going to be. This is a question that I have had to deal with because I've had to go around, as many of you know, after a number of years, these batteries have to be replaced. And so you got to go around to all the UPSs. You probably bought a lot of them at the same time. And now you have to swap the batteries out of every single UPS that you have. Some of those batteries kind of heavy. And once you start collecting a number of them, now you got a big pile of batteries that's on your desk. Now what do you do? What do you do with all of these? Is there something we can use them for? Are they now destined to be just sitting on my desk for the next number of months until I decide? We should probably find a better solution than that. Let's see what you think the right answer is. The question again asks, an office is replacing several old uninterruptible power supplies and has accumulated a large number of heavy internal batteries. Which of the following would be the best way to manage this battery collection? Would it be to add to the weekly garbage pickup, put it in the building's recycling bin, ship it to a hazardous waste location, incinerate at a waste-to-energy plant, or store in a well-ventilated room? Let's now close the poll and see what you think the answer is. 87% say ship that out to a hazardous waste location, and then everything else is single digits. 7% said to store in a well-ventilated room. We've got 5% that said you should incinerate it at a waste-to-energy plant. Kind of made that one up. Put in a building's recycling bin, only 2%, and nobody said to just put it in the garbage. Who's going to know? Nobody will know until the garbage truck catches on fire. And then somebody will probably know. So definitely 0%, not a good idea, not what you should do to be able to have that on there. Well, this becomes a little bit of a problem now. Why would it not be one of these others? Why would we need to ship it to a hazardous waste location? Well, that's definitely the answer we were looking for. 87% of you got that right. And the reason it goes to a hazardous waste location is that it is hazardous waste. In the world of IT, there's most of the things that we work with, most of the equipment we work with is not really that hazardous. And in fact, most of these things that we work with are built so that we are kept away from anything hazardous. But you will be working through other types of components like toner, like batteries, and even other components on motherboards where there is part of that that could be hazardous in particular situations. I look at these batteries, there's probably a great opportunity to have not only chemicals inside of that battery, but could also be a fire hazard. So getting rid of these batteries would be a perfect thing to do. I mentioned earlier, toner is also toxic waste. We don't often think of toner as being toxic, but indeed it is. It's not a very nice thing to have, at least not in its raw form there and getting it on your hands. Once it goes to the printer and it gets fastened to the page, it gets heated up and melted onto the page. That's effectively what's happening on a laser printer. And once we have it melted on the page, it's not hazardous at all. It doesn't come off the page, so we don't have to worry about it. But toner itself does have an aspect to it that you don't want to breathe it in. You don't want to have it on your hands. You don't want to have it on your skin. So we definitely want to have that toner go to a hazardous waste location as well. And there might be other things that we need to use the same way. How do we even know, though? How do we know if that thing that they brought to us can be thrown out in the regular garbage or it has to go and be processed a special way? Well, you would probably want to look at the documentation associated with that component, referred to as the Material Safety Data Sheet, or the MSDS. Sometimes you'll hear this referred to just as the SDS. It's the same thing. It's a document that provides you with detailed explanation of what's inside of this component. Are any of those pieces of that device something that could be considered toxic or hazardous? And if it is, how do we handle the disposal of that? And if we get it on us, what do we do? Do we call somebody? Do we wash it off? Do we use hot water? Do we use cold water? Do we have to use alcohol? What do we use? It tells you all of that inside of the Material Safety Data Sheet. So there's always documentation we can go to. These batteries, once they are used, have really no value to you. You can't revamp them. You can't restore them. You can't make them work again. You can't stick them in an oven and bake them a little longer. There's nothing you can do to make these batteries any good. So that is exactly the important part of this particular question, is understanding why you would want to ship them instead of, for example, store them in a well-ventilated room, which was our second most answered list on here, was the store in a well-ventilated room. It's only 7%. And then what do you do? Just keep them there? Why are you storing them? There's no reason to store these at all. Get them out of the building as soon as possible. In fact, these do have chemicals inside of them that do have the potential to incinerate under the right conditions. We don't want the right conditions. We don't even want the bad conditions, the right conditions, or any conditions at all. Let's get it out of here. And in most environments, we would want to ship it to the location specified in the material safety data sheet, which would be to an authorized hazardous waste location that accepts these types of batteries. That is the answer we wanted. Don't put it in the garbage. Don't put it in the recycling bin. That's not where these go. And they tell you that on the MSDS. And the idea of incinerating a battery is just, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. Do not put flames near one of these batteries. Very bad idea. Unless you really like a light show, and then you're going to get one. Somebody's going to get hurt, though. Don't do that. So the idea of incinerating it is a bad idea. And then is there a waste to energy plant somewhere? Maybe on the back of your time machine, you can shove it in the Mr. Coffee there, and that gives you more energy. Maybe. I guess you're going to have to go to the future before you ever have something like that one. So not a good idea. Do not incinerate. The only answer here that makes sense is the one that 87% of you chose, ship to a hazardous waste location. That is exactly correct. Let's do another one. Next on our list is this question that asks, a network administrator needs to share a folder named confidential and configure it to be hidden from normal network resource browsing. Which of the following would be the best way to achieve this concealment? Would we change the folder attributes to hidden? Would we remove all non-administrative permissions? Would we encrypt the folder with EFS? Would we add an administrative password to the share? Or would we append a $sign to the end of the share name? It's got to be one of those. If you think you know the answer, use this link, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer and be able to see if you can pick the right one. We'll see at the end if we really did choose the right answer for this particular question, for all of you trying to properly secure information on your network. Maybe you've done something like this before. There's a lot of different configuration options for rights and permissions and concealment and encryption and security and authentication. And there's just a lot of places, a lot of buttons, a lot of knobs you can twist inside of the operating system. This is a very specific scenario, so let's see if you happen to know this scenario and how it would work. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in what you think the best way to achieve this concealment might be. Please don't put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. This will be a good thing to see if we really know our stuff. And no Googling. No Google. Do not Google. Do not Google. I see you Googling. Do not Google. I try to make questions that would be rather complicated to Google anyway. I'm not pulling these questions from somewhere else on the internet either. I make every single one of these questions new every time we do a live stream, which also helps me so that I know you're not Googling. Because up until this point, nobody's seen it but me. So it's all been kept in a vault. I have one of the big, what are we down to, 4 accounting firms that are watching the vault. I don't. But you don't see it, and the world doesn't see it until you see it on these live streams. Exactly where we would go. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a network administrator needs to share a folder named confidential. Sounds secret, doesn't it? And they need to configure it to be hidden from normal network resource browsing. Which of the following would be the best way to achieve this concealment? Would it be change the folder attributes to hidden? Would it be to remove all non-administrative permissions? Would it be to encrypt the folder with EFS? Should we add an administrative password to the share, or should we append a $sign to the end of the share name? What did you choose? I want to see. I almost just kept going without seeing what. And that's the end of that question. Next question. No, let's see how you did. Little bit of a rainbow. We got a little bit of options here. We did not get a majority on this one. 43% said you stick a $sign on the end. 29% said you change the folder attributes to hidden. You've got 14% that said add an administrative password to the share. We have 11% that said remove all non-administrative permissions, and only one single digit in this case, 4% of you said you encrypt the folder with EFS. That makes it hidden when you do that. It does not. As you could probably tell at this point, 43% was the plurality of answers that we got. Indeed, that is the correct answer. Append a $sign to the end of the share name. What in the world are you talking about? We just stick a $sign at the end and somehow that hides it? Yes, that's exactly the way it works. Shared resources in Windows are a very common thing you will be working with because there are tons of Windows shares that people make all the time. There's Windows shares that everybody uses. There's some that are specific to different projects. You might have a group of documents you'd like to share with people within your department. So you might create a Windows share and provide the access for people inside of your department. This also allows you to associate the letter of what we would call a drive, even though it's not technically a physical drive, sort of a virtual reference. As many of you know, the C drive in your system has been the main boot drive of your computer. It can be a different drive letter, but most systems have a C drive as the main boot drive. Everything else can be assigned to something else. So we could assign one Windows share to drive H, another share to drive G, another share to drive M, so that you can just type in, if you want to go to that share, you type in M: and hit enter, and now you're on the M drive. Or you go to your Windows file manager and you click the M drive, and now you see that particular share. You don't even have to remember the server name and the share name and any of those other pieces. You just go to drive M, and everything you need is there. It makes it very easy to find what you're looking for. But what if you didn't want people to be able to stumble across your share? What if you wanted to make it so that when people said, show me every share that's on my network, your share was not listed? You wanted to conceal or hide that share from somebody normally browsing around on the network. And the way that you would do that, you stick a $sign on the end. Now, this only provides the ability to sort of hide it. You're kind of moving a plant right in front of it. Yeah, you don't see it there. All I see is a plant there. You're sticking a camouflage right over the top of it. Oh, I don't see it. It must not be here. So although you don't see it on a normal search through the network, it's still there. And if you knew it was there, you can still access it. If you know the server name and you know the name of the share, you can go right to it. You don't have to have it visible to you on the network. So this functionality of adding a $sign, if you're thinking, that doesn't sound very secure, because it isn't. It's not designed to be a security technique. It's just designed to help you manage the enormous list of shares that might pop up on your computer. That $sign, although it seems simple, becomes a very important thing. If you want to see all of the shares on your system, you can find them in your administrative tools under the computer management option. It will list out all the shares on your computer, and you can see everything that's there. I have a few here that are listed. They even have a $sign. I shared my entire C drive, and I stuck a $sign in front of it so that you could not see it when you browse the network. Oh, but it's there, and they can access it and log in if you have the right permissions associated with it. So that is the answer we wanted. Append a $sign to the end of the share name. This is from my video under the 220-1201 or 1202 exam, section 1.7, and the name of the video is the Windows Network Technologies. Now, we also have in this other list, 29% said change the folder attributes to hidden. This will change the attributes in the operating system, but it doesn't change the attributes on the share. It only changes it in the OS. And since you're accessing it from a share, you're already there anyway. Hiding it inside of your operating system doesn't hide it on the network side. So that's the big difference between changing an NTFS permission versus changing a share permission. Changing folder attributes would be an NTFS permission, which has no effect on the visibility of that share across the rest of the network. 14% said add an administrative password to the share. All shares have a set of authentications and authorizations you can put on them. So one of the things that you would focus on, at least from an administrative password perspective, is you only provide access for administrators. You don't have to add additional passwords. You don't have to put secret codes in. You don't have to hide it in any other way. You would simply just say, here's a share and only administrators have access. There is no reason to add an administrative share. But even if you did add an administrative password to a share, doesn't change how that share is viewed when you are browsing the network. It would still be visible, which means it would not be the right answer for this question. 11% of you said remove all non-administrative permissions. Kind of the same thing, isn't it? And again, we aren't talking about permissions of accessing the files. We're talking about just seeing the share in a big list of all the shares on your network. That would not provide that functionality either. And lastly, encrypting the folder with EFS, not a bad idea, would certainly ensure that someone not logged into the network or into that system would be able to view the information inside of those documents because everything is encrypted. But the problem with the encrypting file system, EFS, is that in this particular scenario, is it doesn't change how people are able to view a share across the network. All it does is protect the data that's on the system where it is stored. So even if you encrypted the folder with EFS, you would still be able to see it from a normal network browsing perspective, which means only one of these answers could even possibly be correct. And that would be the one that 43% of you chose. Append a $ to the end of the share name. It sounds silly and it works perfectly. It's one of those things where it's such a simple solution. Why don't we just put a $sign on the end and it disappears? Well, that's way too simple. Thank you, Microsoft, for doing that one so easily for us. I love that is just a simple thing you can do, and it works across any share you would put on there. Whenever you start looking at the objectives that are in this A+ exam, you see they are many and varied. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of objectives you have to know for both the 220, 1201, and 1202 exam, which means you have to go through a lot of content just to memorize all of it. Our course ourselves for the Core 1 and Core 2, 137 videos, 19 hours of content. That's a lot of information to get a single A+ certification. And maybe by the time you finish watching the first video and you finally make it to video 137, do you even remember what you were doing on video number 1? What was that video even about? It would be nice to have something that could help remind you or give you a little more insight into the things that you saw in that first video or in every video that you watched, or maybe even the videos you didn't watch because you just didn't have time. That is the reason I created my course notes. Here's a copy of the PDF version of my 220-1202 course notes. We, of course, have this available in a physical edition as well. It is identical in content, identical in style and scope, but it is simply in a different physical dead tree type format there. It's real. It's a physical thing. That's why we call it the physical edition. The digital edition, as I mentioned, is identical. It has the table of contents inside of it. There's links that can take you exactly there. And of course, we step through every video. All of the text from every video is in here. All the important graphics, all of the important charts, they are in this document. And that's because I wanted to have a single place to go. Once you've watched all the videos, maybe you've read a book or two, you've done some labs, you want a place where everything can be referenced quickly and easily. And that is exactly what we've done with these course notes. If you want to know more about the course notes, you can see them on our website. We have a little demonstration there you can go through. We also have both our Core 1 and Core 2 course notes out there. You can buy them together and you get a little bit of a discount. Maybe something to consider as well. When you try to purchase one of them, it'll ask you, hey, do you want the other one? Because you get a little bit of a break on the cost. So that might be something to consider as well. It's also a great way to support the things that we do here. Whenever we are creating new courses, it takes time and it takes effort and it takes money to be able to make those courses. And thanks to you and your support, we are able to continue this. I got a message from YouTube this week that said, you hit 19 years since the very first video was put on YouTube. That was an in-map video we added there 19 years ago, and we have been going strong ever since, thanks to your support. So thank you so much for this. Hopefully this is a win-win. Not only you're supporting what we're doing, we are hopefully supporting what you are doing well, which is to get a job in IT or even get a better job in IT, and maybe these course notes can help you as well. Find out more at professormesser.com/1202 notes. Let's do another question, shall we? Next on this list, right here. This question on this list asks, a network technician is setting up a new wireless network for a corporate headquarters. Why would the technician choose enterprise mode instead of personal mode for this setup? Would that be because it increases the wireless encryption strength? It allows for the use of more than one access point. It enables WPA3 single sign-on. It enables 802.1q trunking from the access point, or it provides individual user account management. Wow, there's a lot to work through there, but only one of these is going to be the best answer in this scenario. If you think what the answer is, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. So a lot of us have wireless networks at home, but most of our wireless networks at home are a personal mode wireless network. There's an enterprise mode as well. And you really have to understand, some access points don't call it enterprise mode, they call it other terms. So it's important to know there's other terms as well. But perhaps more importantly, why would you choose one over the other? That's what we're asking this question. If you think you know the answer, you can submit your answer at that link we have on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. These answers here also, I really have to parse these answers out. As I'm reading the answers out to you, I obviously wrote these questions and wrote these answers. Sometimes I read through a question thinking, wow, which one is it? I really have to think about this as I am going through each one of these, because all of these things might be things that I would like, but is that what the enterprise versus personal mode does, or does it not? I have to kind of think about that as we're going through the pieces of this. So hopefully you are familiar with those different security modes inside of wireless networks. If you're not, you're about to be. We will go through them right now and figure out the details. In fact, now's a good time to do it. The question again asks, a network technician is setting up a new wireless network for corporate headquarters. Why would the technician choose enterprise mode instead of personal mode for the setup? Well, it's on a Starship, obviously. It increases the wireless encryption strength. It allows for the use of more than one access point. It enables WPA3 single sign-on. It enables 802.1q trunking from the access point, or it provides individual user account management. What did you choose? Oh, I can't wait to see this one. Here we go. Oh, another rainbow, and another one where we did not get a majority, although the plurality of you said provides individual user account management. We have 27% that said enables WPA3 single sign-on, or SSO. 15% said it increases the wireless encryption strength. 10% of you said that it allows for the use of more than one access point. And then 8% said it enables 802.1q trunking from the access point. Well, which one is it? Well, let's look at enterprise mode, personal mode, and any other mode options associated with this. Whenever you see this, if you go to your wireless access point, this is a very basic wireless access point, and even this basic access point had a lot of different options. Let me zoom up, zoom in, hold on. It's very difficult to do sometimes. On this particular access point, this is one that was sort of one that allowed me to have no type of security. This is the security level that we are setting. Currently on this access point, it's set to WPA2 personal. This might be at somebody's house, for example. You could, of course, turn off any security on your wireless access point by choosing none. Don't do that. That's not what we want. That is not the right answer. Don't use that one. We have other options that are listed here. Even on this older access point that I've listed here, WEP is one of the options. You don't really find that one anymore, and certainly not one you should choose. Notice when we get to others, and I'm going to scroll down here to the WPA3 options, There is a WPA2, WPA3 personal. We could do just a WPA3 personal, but there's also a WPA3 enterprise. And that's what we were choosing in this case. We had to choose between the personal version and the enterprise version. And this becomes a little bit of a challenge. If it's open, anybody can access this particular device, this particular access point. You don't need any type of authentication. If you're doing a personal, you might also see this listed as a PSK. That stands for pre-shared key. That means that everybody on the network has to know the key to be able to use that particular wireless network. If this is in your house, for example, you probably have it set up this way. So it's a personal setting, and people come over to visit. They go, oh, what's your wireless password? Oh, it's Ninja One. It's stay off my wireless network. It's whatever your password happens to be. And that's a good one to use because it's just your local family and friends. You don't have to worry so much about somebody coming in from outside for a day using your network and then you never see them again. So personal networks give you a little bit more flexibility and it's a little more simpler. You just give everybody the same password and they've got it. If you need to change the password, it changes for everybody. Well, if you start thinking about an enterprise, that is not a great way to do it. You mean I'd have to share my password with everybody in the company for the wireless network? And then they could give that password to someone else and they would also have access to that? That's a bad idea too. And then what if one person leaves the company? Well, then I'd have to change the password and then tell everybody what the new password is. That doesn't sound very effective either. So we need some other way to authenticate and provide a functionality that would allow us to get people onto the network, but allow them to use their personal credentials, allow them to use their personal username and their personal password. And maybe even it's the same username and password they use for everything else in the company. And that's how most organizations will do it. Here's your login name. Here's your login password. Go. You can use that username and password for anything you run into. Use it for your VPN access. Use it to log into your computer at the beginning of the day. Use it for the wireless network. Use it for everything. And the reason we're able to have that level of access, that very detailed individual access, is we're using the enterprise mode, which integrates it with some type of authentication service like Radius, LDAP, TACAX, or some other type of method to be able to authenticate individuals onto the network. You might also see this mode listed as 802.1x. That refers to network access control, which is effectively what we're doing with this, is providing network access control. That's what enterprise really turns on, is that aspect of NAC functionality. NAC is a bigger term that has a lot of other things associated with it, but from an authentication perspective, it means that you can use your personal authentication to be able to access the wireless access point. This makes it very easy. When somebody leaves the organization, we disable their account. And then because we disabled their account, they can't log into a computer, they can't access files that are on a share, and they can't log into and access the wireless network because their account has been turned off. And we have set up individual user account management through the use of that enterprise mode. So the 39% of you that chose individual user account management got that one spot on. That is the answer that we were looking for. That's what enterprise turns on, is the network assignments that would allow you to manage it at an individual level. That's exactly. So if you're using Microsoft's Active Directory, you're probably using LDAP as that management functionality. The access point checks that account login and would allow or disallow access to all of that. Almost all companies configure an enterprise mode on their access points or configure it for 802.1x. The terms will be different depending on the access point you are using. And when you have that, now you're using everybody's individual logins to access the network. 27% of you said it would enable a WPA3 single sign-on. Single sign-on is a very specific function. You would need to have protocols and systems set up that understand that single sign-on capability. For example, in Microsoft Windows, Kerberos is what is used to provide that single sign-on function. but there's nothing about enterprise mode or personal mode that has anything to do with single sign-on. That 802.1x functionality doesn't by itself provide any type of single sign-on, so that would not be the answer that we were looking for. The enterprise versus personal mode really changes nothing with the encryption strength. You get exactly the same encryption on a personal network that you get on an enterprise network. There is no difference between those. And why wouldn't you? There's nothing at home that you're doing. In fact, I would argue the things you're doing at home might even be more important to keep safe than the things you are doing at work, because it's your personal information. It's your personal files. It's your personal finances. It's your personal documents and pictures and videos from your last vacation that you want to keep private, that only you have access to those things, or you have the control over the access of those things. So encryption strength does not change whether you go personal or enterprise. Allowing 10% said allows for the use of more than one access point. Nope, that has nothing. The enterprise and personal has nothing to do with the number of access points. I'm using a personal mode on my network, and on my network, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 access points and 1 access point repeater that's in the garage. So I've got a very spread out area. So I really need to distribute the access points across different floors, across different sides of the house. These access points, they just don't put out a lot of signal. So you really got to have, I had to have multiples just to cover everything I needed to cover. And one of those is in the studio. So unlike a normal house, I have a separate studio wireless network set up here as well. I can do that all on a personal network. So you don't need any type of changes to enterprise mode or personal mode to have more than one access point. And then lastly, 8% of you said enables 802.1q trunking from the access point. Most access points don't trunk. Usually that's a switch functionality. I guess it could, but moving between personal and enterprise mode has nothing to do with trunking functionality, assuming that an access point could even provide that to you. Now, the access points I have actually do have a trunking or a tagging functionality I can add so that one SSID, one network, wireless network name might be on one VLAN, a different wireless network name might be on a different VLAN. So there might be a little bit of what some might consider tagging, but it's not trunking. Trunking would be to take multiples and multiple VLANs and separate them out across and span them and transmit them across multiple switches. That's not exactly what an access point is doing, but we can kind of stretch the terms a bit. We know what they're talking about when someone says trunking. Tagging would have probably been a more specific and perhaps a better term to use there to help fool you a little bit better. But indeed, this has nothing to do with personal versus enterprise anyway. So whether you're trunking or tagging or doing anything with 802.1q doesn't apply here. Only 80% of you thought you did anyway. In this case, the only answer is the one that the 39% of you chose. It provides individual user account management because we have network access control, or what many people will call 802.1x. That provides the ability to use your own username and password when accessing the network. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that provides an attachment, a digital signature attachment that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you would follow these instructions. If you do not follow these instructions, you do not get a CEU. I get a couple of those every time we do one of these, so I try to make that very clear. You must follow these instructions. The instructions are, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us. On a form that pops up when you click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2026 Core 2 or June 2026 2201102, maybe 2026 Core 2A Plus, something similar to that in the subject line. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, user account management. Those are the 3 words that are your super secret code words of the month. You can put other things in that message if you'd like to. If you'd like to send me a note, I'm reading through every single one of these. I like to read them, so I appreciate you putting them in there, but you don't have to. If all you want to do is get the email from me and let's not mess around and I'm not sending you a message, that's fine too. I get you. So just put in user account management. Let's go through the instructions again. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put June 2026 Core 2 A+. In the body of that message, please put the super secret code words of the month, user account management. I turn these things around probably in about a week or so. So don't be alarmed if the return email doesn't appear in a matter of moments. That's because I'm here right now doing this. But I try to get to these things. I'll probably get these done this weekend, in fact, because I want to be sure I get those out to you. Have a look and get them to me as soon as you can, and I'll make sure I get those turned around by the weekend. Hopefully that gives you some place to go with thinking about what you would do if you needed some CEUs. I realize not everybody uses CEUs to renew their certification anymore, and that's okay. I don't mind sending these out even if you don't use them. So it's a very simple thing for me to do. I just need to go through all of them to confirm that you followed the instructions, to confirm that you got the super secret code words correct. And if those two things match, I send them right out to you. I have AI that does this for me. I don't. It's just a script. I just wrote a script. I'm just calling everything AI now. I put gas in my car using AI. Everything's AI. So why not do it that way? Speaking of not using AI and needing something that would be 100% accurate towards the very specific exam objectives for this exam, let's talk about my practice exams book. I wrote this book because there's so many bad questions on the internet. They are just everywhere. What I started to find when I started looking around the internet is that the questions that are out there, many of them completely outdated, asking you about topics that have nothing to do with the most current A+ exam. It's asking you a question about token ring. That hasn't been on the exam for 15 years. So those types of things are common, and it's a waste of your time and doesn't help you at all with studying for the most current exam or helping you earn that certification. I also find a lot of questions that really do not ask you accurate information. They'll have a question and an answer, but the question and answer really don't have anything to do with each other. So that's kind of a weird one, but I find it a lot. I find a lot of questions that are just non sequiturs, have nothing to do with the set of answers that are there. And most of them don't even give you an explanation on why that would be the wrong answer. And the other thing I tend to find is questions that really don't prepare you for the style or the tone of the actual exam. And that's because the exam has a very specific way of asking questions that many people aren't ready for. Many people think it's going to be a simple Q&A like, what do the letters HTTP stand for? You will not get a question like that on your exam. That's just a gimme. And it doesn't really help the exam know that you really understand the content. This exam is very specific. So let me give you an example. I have a practice exams book that I wrote because of this. This practice exams book contains 380 pages. This is a thick book. It has 3 separate 90-question practice exams inside of it. The practice exams inside of it have both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions inside of the book. You'll find performance-based questions that I have inside of that. So each exam has 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice questions. But I wanted to show you one. Let's go through a question from the practice exams book so that you can kind of get a feel for what these questions are like on an actual exam. So here we go. This is one that is question A11 in my practice exams book. It's on page 6, so we know exactly where this is if you wanted to look in your practice exams book. And again, please, no answers in the chat room. I realize we don't have this in our QA, but just follow along with me. The question asks, after a user authenticates to a website, the browser performs very slowly and some of the items on the page will not display properly. Which of the following would be the best way to resolve this issue? Should we disable browser notifications, update the web server certificate, update the system BIOS, or clear the browser cache? Now, this is a PDF, so I can even annotate. There are certain things that I want to bring out on here, certain words that are important to me. I can do that either with my mouse, or if I have a stylus, I can actually write on the page. And of course, you can save these. So next time you bring up the document, everything that you saved is in there. We don't restrict or prevent you from doing any of that inside of this PDF. now that we've looked through the question and the answers, we might choose one. We might think we know what the answer might be. If you just want to know whether it's A, B, C, or D, I have a big page on page 33 that I call my quick answers, which will just tell you every question and whether it's A, B, C, D, or E, or whatever it happens to be. But I want more detail. I want to really understand what the right answer is and what the wrong answers are. And so I have another section called the details. It's on page 49. As I mentioned, we're currently on page 6. Well, I don't want to have to scroll through a PDF file. Nobody enjoys doing that. So in my document, I've created quick links on each one of these. When I mouse over where it says the details, notice the arrow changes to a little hand, which means I can click on it, and it takes me to that page, just like that. And it shows me A11. Here's the question again. After user authenticates, browser performs poorly. Here's the answers. And it tells me the answer is D, clear the browser cache. And like many practice exams you might find, we explain to you why the right answer really is the one that is right. My problem, though, when I'm taking a practice exam, it's practice. So I'm going to get a lot of these wrong. And the place that frustrates me greatly when I do this online is that's a great opportunity to explain to me why the answer is wrong and teach me why I got the answer wrong so that next time I get the answer right. So inside of my book, every incorrect answer is completely documented. So you can understand why the answer was not disable browser notifications, why the answer was not update the web server certificate, and why the answer was not to update the system BIOS. We go through each one of these and we kind of close that loop so that if you got it wrong, now you know why you got it wrong. You know why the right answer is right. And if any of these topics ever show up again on any other question anywhere else, even on your actual exam, you will understand the implications of each individual topic. It's almost like you're getting 4 different questions in one question because of the way that we document these in the book. And if you went through this question and none of this makes any sense to you, and you're thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know these terms. I don't know these abbreviations. I don't know this context that you have this in. We can go right here at the bottom. This is the video that I use to make this question. It is from our 1202 course, Objective 3.4. The name of the video is Troubleshooting Security Issues, and you can use the QR code to go directly to that video, or you can go to the link on your screen, professormesser.link/1202-030401. Well, there you go. You've now got good understanding of this particular question. Now we want to go back to where we started. And if you didn't even realize it, your PDF reader probably has a back button on it, just like your browser has. So when I click the back button, click, I'm back to where we started. And I can go to the next question that is in the book. We can work through all of the ones that are there. We can just go question by question by question. That's certainly a good way to go through and understand what the different options might be. Just like with my practice exams books, or just like my course notes books, my practice exams books, you can get the Core 1 and Core 2 at the same time at a little bit of a discount. So that's something that might save you a little bit of money, something to consider, or you can buy them separately. Either way works for me. Doesn't matter. It's a great way, again, to support the things that we do here, and hopefully gives you something that can really help you study for this exam. I would argue better than any other practice exam that you're going to find. Find out more about this. Go to professormesser.com/core2PE for more information. This whole time, I've really been talking about the exam itself and the exam objectives. And you may be wondering, what are these exam objectives that you're thinking about? The exam objectives are available on the CompTIA website and tell you everything you need to know to pass this exam. Everything. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, I happen to have a copy of the exam objectives right here for the 220-1202 exam, or what they are also calling the V15 for these. I don't know either, but there it is. And it goes through every section, like Section 1, Operating System. Section 1.1 says, explain common operating system OS types and their purposes. So you need to understand Windows and Linux and Mac OS and Chrome OS. You also need to understand iPad OS, iOS, and Android for the mobile operating systems. Then you need to know the various file system types, the new technology file system, which we never call it that. It's just NTFS, REFS, FAT32, ext4, XFS, APFS, exFAT. Then understand vendor lifecycle limitations, which is end of life and update limitations, and compatibility concerns between operating systems. That's just the first section of the first domain. There's obviously many more bullets. Let's put it into a format we can actually read, shall we? We'll do it this way. So we just went through section 1. Scroll. There it is. We just went through section 1. So section 2 continues. There's all the information we need about performing OS installations and upgrades in a diverse environment. Section 1.3 is comparing and contrasting basic features of Microsoft Windows. Section 4 means given a scenario, use Microsoft Windows operating system features and tools. And you have to know all those tools and command lines. I told you there's a lot of command lines. And it just goes on and on and on and on. We got lots of pages of this page. There's 2 more. There's 2 more pages. There's 2 more pages. There's 2 more pages. There's 2 more pages. Finally, at the end, and they give you an acronym list at the back of this. This tells you everything you need to know to pass this exam. CompTIA sticks to this list like glue. So if you know every bullet in this document, you can't help but pass your exam because you know it all at that point. I often say if you can go to any bullet that says appropriately deal with difficult customers or situations, do not argue with customer and or be defensive. If you can explain to yourself or to someone else, why is that important? How does that fit into the world of technology? Then you've got that topic down good. And maybe that's one we can mark as knowing. In fact, maybe we can even annotate since we've got our PDF reader up. We'll say, yep, I know that one. So we can mark that one as being good. I don't have to go through that one. Avoid dismissing customer issues. I'm not sure I understand exactly what they mean by that one. I sort of have an idea, so we'll mark that one as yellow. Avoid being judgmental. Well, if you know me, you know I have no idea what you're talking about there. What do you mean avoid being judgmental? I'm going to pass judgment every time I get a chance. So no, you don't need to do that. And here's why. So this is a good opportunity for you to step through one by one and know exactly what will be asked of you. Test your knowledge on each individual topic and really prepare yourself. This makes a great checklist prior to walking in to your actual exam. If you want to find this, I've got a nice breakdown of where to find this on the CompTIA website along with direct links. On my site, simply go to professormesser.com/objectives to learn more. We do one of these study groups every month, not just May, not just June. Here's the last one we're working on. For June, we've got the 2nd and the 4th. We also have on the 18th of June is currently we have scheduled our Network Plus study group. And on the 24th of June, we currently have scheduled our Security Plus study group. These dates can sometimes change. They are fluid. They can sometimes be very different than where I initially thought to be able to do that. So I do recommend that if you're planning to attend, that you always check in on our calendar. Our events calendar can be found at professormesser.com/calendar. There's also an events link at the top of our website, and we have an events channel on our Discord. I update all of those at the same time if there is ever anything that we want to change with the dates. And that does happen sometimes. We also have our July dates tentatively scheduled at this point. I haven't published them yet, but they will be added to the calendar as soon as I really lock those down so that you will know exactly when there's going to be. I think the July dates, I might even have some of those we can have a look at. The July dates are, I think, the first week of July, after the 4th, that week after July 4th, that Tuesday and Thursday. So that's what we're shooting for, but we'll always have those in our calendar. You can always find out at professormesser.com/calendar. Of course, we will be here in July to talk about all of that. Well, can you believe we've gone through an hour? We actually went over an hour a little bit. So at least we have something to work through along those lines. But I will be taking your questions in our after show. If you do have a question that you would like to submit, you can do that at any time from professormesser.com/QA and be able to know exactly that it has been submitted. I will see it pop up on my side. That's a very easy way to do it. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/1202success. We also have our vouchers and exam hacks ebook. These are all discounted, so you can save a bit of money rather than going over to the CompTIA website. Find out about those at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, we include the very popular retake assurance options. little bit of insurance to go with your voucher so that if you don't pass it the first time, you can simply take the exam again and not have to buy an entirely new voucher for that. Save you maybe a few bucks if that's how you'd like to work with those vouchers. We have it available on our site as well at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, on Discord, on X, on YouTube, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and many other places. If you want to find us, type in professormesser.com/ the name of the site you'd like to find us on. Or of course, we've got plenty of those social media icons over on the website. You can always click on one of those to find us. We are all over the internet. You can certainly find us. If you ever want to know where we might be, we got our website there for you to find that at professormesser.com. You'll be able to know exactly where that happens to be. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but stick around. I'll be taking your questions next in the after show. Thanks for being here during this first hour, answering the questions, putting up with the bad jokes. You guys are the best. Thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group. Now I get to push buttons on my side. I get to take a quick sip. One moment, please. Okay. There we are. Much better. Now it's time for the after show. One of the great things about the after show, well, one of the great things I think about the after show is that I don't have to prepare anything for the after show. The process of creating all these questions and putting them into Vevox, it takes time. So it is kind of nice that we do have a section of this that I can go back and really look at questions that you have. Because I think a lot of this was just me asking you. There should be a way that you should be able to send me a question. And indeed there is. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to ask a question of me and what we are doing here. What are we doing here? What are any of us doing here? Once you submit the question, you won't see it pop on the screen immediately, but you can always ask the question. And if you ever come back for another study group and you think of a question in the middle of the first hour, you can still submit your questions then as well. So throughout the entire event, you can always use that link, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top of the screen where you can switch over and ask me the questions. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go through the questions that you have to see what options there might be or questions you might have about technology, CompTIA, the industry, the weather, whatever it happens to be. You can ask me anything. I don't know that I'll answer anything, but you can ask me anything. Working through it, we'll have to figure out what these happen to be. Let's start with, I think I even mentioned most recently, I talked about earning that CEU to renew your certification. Well, let's talk about renewals just a bit because the question came in from Dave. It's Dave, man. He passed his A+ Core 1 and Core 2 in 2025. Congratulations, Dave. Dave's asking, I am wondering how many CEs I can use when applying them for a cert renewal before it expires in 2028. Therein is a good question. And I'm going to start with the idea of collecting CEUs is just one of the ways that you could use to renew your certification. There are many different things you could do to renew your cert. You may not want to collect any CEUs. You can still renew your certification. If you're trying to break this down and you'd like to see more of a concise, or in this case, perhaps even a more detailed overview of all of the different methods for renewal and what the advantages and disadvantages might be for each method, of course, I have a video on this. It's part of the YouTube video description of this video. And the video name is called How to Renew Your A+ Network Plus or Security Plus Certification in Just a Few Hours. And I do talk about not just doing it for a few hours, but every possible way to renew your certification. If you're trying to figure out or get more context on this, I would recommend you head over to the CompTIA.org website. On the CompTIA website, there is a link at the top for resources. And this is the type of resource you want, because the links here are Explore Careers, Certifications, Enterprise, Government, Partner, Academic, Resources, and Shop. So resources is where we would like to be. Inside of resources is the option for continuing education right here at the bottom. Continuing education. And we're going to click on continuing education. It even says right at the top, in a much more summarized view than the title of my video, need to renew quickly? Renew now with CertMaster CE. This is a challenge I get a lot of times because people will show up in our Discord and they will say, my certification expires tomorrow and I need 30 CEUs. What do I do? And my answer is don't collect CEUs. Use CertMaster CE. You can do this in a day. You can go all the way through it, submit it, and you're renewed for another 3 years. And in fact, that's exactly what that person did in that scenario. They came back the next day and said, that was a breeze. I went through CertMaster CE. It's an online training. You have to answer every question correctly. If you don't answer the questions correctly, you just reset the questions and do it again. And they have different checkpoints where you have to submit those. But once they went through everything, they submitted it and they were done. That was it. They didn't have to do anything else. They didn't have to pay any more money. They didn't have to collect any CEUs. They didn't have to submit anything. They just used CertMaster CE. It's a great way to do it. It's a fast way to do it. And I think it's what most people these days are doing when they're not using any of those other renewal methods. There's an explanation here of why you need to renew, learn about the renewal process, choose your renewal path, and submit your CEUs. I'm going to go down choose your renewal path because you could renew with a single activity. And in this case, it means CertMaster CE. It also means that you could take a higher level CompTIA certification. So if you have the A+ exam, you could take and pass the Network Plus or the Security Plus, and you would renew your A+. How would you know which one you could take? Well, you click on Learn More, and it shows you on the screen if your certification is, in this case, the certification that Dave had was his A+. So we scroll down here to CompTIA A+. There it is, CompTIA A+. And CompTIA A+ by itself does not renew anything else. That's kind of expected. But if you took the Network Plus, that fully renews A+. If you took Security Plus, that would fully renew Network Plus and A+. If you took and passed Linux Plus, that would renew A+. And I think that there's a couple more in here. CISA Plus, Pentest Plus also fully renews. They renew a bunch of them, including A+. Probably not your best choice. Cloud Plus doesn't do any for the new version. CloudNet X, boy, you're getting into more advanced certifications there, but it does renew A+. And then lastly, Security X is a different cert. That's not Security Plus. Security X is the old CASP, C-A-S-P, which was the cybersecurity analyst. Not security analyst was CISA. The CASP is the cybersecurity administrator. I forget what they called that. Now that they don't use the abbreviation anymore, I've completely forgotten it. But that is their higher level above CISA Plus is what is now Security X on the certification list. Also renews A+. So if you just wanted to take another certification exam, that's a good way to do it. Now, if somebody showed up the day before their renewal and said, I need to renew by tomorrow, well, you don't have enough time to study and take a separate exam. So that particular example would only apply if you had enough time to go through it. You can also take non-CompTIA IT certifications, and they may apply to renew your existing cert. For example, for the CompTIA A+, if you need 20 CEUs to renew your A+. And there are certifications from Amazon, Apple, Broadcom, Checkpoint, Cisco, and others. Some of them that will do the full 20 CEUs. Some of them, let's see if they have any in here any longer that do fewer than 20. Looks like they're all 20 these days, aren't they? That makes it much easier to figure out. So if it's in this list and you passed it, you get 20 CEUs. You effectively are getting a new certification and renewing your A+ all at the same time. But you would need to submit that with a CEU, 3 years of a CEU renewal cost. There is a maintenance fee that you pay each year. Those 3 years of maintenance fees would also need to be applied along with passing that third-party certification. If you take CertMaster CE or you take a higher level CompTIA cert, you don't have to pay the 3-year maintenance fee. So there's a little bit of a financial incentive to go with the single method of renewing. And then the next one, let's go back another one, is renewing with multiple activities. This is where CEUs come along. So you could do some training or higher education. You can do IT industry participation, publishing, or work experience. Those can be accumulated as CEUs, and then you hand in your CEUs along with your CEU maintenance fees each year, and you can renew that way. For example, if we go to a training and higher education, if you attend a live webinar, that's the link right there, I provide you with that email that includes this documentation. And that live webinar, let's look at their table here. Attend a live webinar for A+, you can get 4 of those in a single 3-year renewal period. So it takes 20 CEUs to renew. I'll just watch 20 webinars. Oh, if only that were true. Unfortunately, you're only able to get credit for 4. And then you would need to collect other CEUs somewhere else. If you have a Data Plus, let's say you have Network Plus, you can only accumulate 6 webinar category CEUs. But there's other things you can do. If you attend a conference, you get 4 more CEUs. If you attend a college course, you get 20. So if you're in college, you got this made as long as one of your college courses is one that has a topic that is also included in the A+ exam. They do detail this. So if you click complete a college course, the relevance is at least 50% of the course content must relate to one or more of the exam objectives for the certification. That's probably a pretty good list there. You'll probably fit that into most things for something like that. And they tell you exactly how to submit it. You submit using this. You go to the training section, you log in, you put in your credentials, and you could submit your CEUs directly on the CompTIA website. So that gives you at least some idea, Dave, of where you can go with collecting CEUs. Do you take a higher level certification? Since your certification expires in 2028, you got some options. You can decide now what is going to be my best way to renew. You might have already done something that gives you all 20 points. You don't even realize it. So take some time and read through the CompTIA website regarding continuing education so you know what options are available to you. And maybe there's some options available to you that you've already gone through. Have you already been to an industry event? Have you already been to a webinar? Have you taken a training class? Have you taken a higher level certification? You might have already renewed and you just don't know it yet. You just need to tell CompTIA. So that may be an easy way to do it. And maybe just taking your CertMaster CE and not even thinking about it anymore is a much better way of approaching that problem. I think a lot of people end up doing that. If you have questions, you can always submit those at any time by going to your link on the screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your question. So we have a lot to go through. I like that people sometimes will send me actual test questions. Well, not actual test questions, but they'll send me other test questions that they would like me to answer. That's not what we're doing. I want to know if you have a question about the industry, about getting a job, about ways to manage your renewals, or anything else. That would be the place to go. So hopefully that will help you decide what type of information you would like to put into that link on your screen at professormesser.com/QA. Let's keep going through this list. Here's a question that generically can be applied to many different things. So I think it may be a good one to step through. This is from Jack. Jack asks, hey, so I'm a college student and I'm trying over the summer to do the CompTIA trifecta. So I have some questions. Is it possible I can skip A+? This sounds good already, doesn't it? Let's keep going. I have been watching your course videos, but I'm wondering if I could skip it because it's expensive and is also more base level information. Also, do you think I could get CCNA or Network Plus as it relates to internship job search in the future? Wow, you're looking to just jump over the basics. Who needs basics after all? It's not important that you need to know how to troubleshoot an operating system or to replace hardware. You just jump right into, why even stop at the CCNA? You should just be the CEO. I think that's the best way to approach the problem. You can kind of see why we have a graduated pathway to get you from the start to the end. First, let's address your question. Can you skip A+? Absolutely, you can skip A+. There's no requirement that you take A+ to get a job in the IT industry. Now, many employers put in their job descriptions, they would like you to have your A plus, or in some cases, some of these job descriptions say you're required to have an A plus. So in that scenario, I might be wrong. You might find that I can't skip A plus. I really do need A plus because this employer insists that I have A plus. Not unusual. That's something that happens and I see all the time on our site. So you can skip A plus though. There is no requirement. Unlike getting a professional licensing, let's say you were going to be a nurse. To be a nurse in practically any state in the United States, you have to become board certified. You have to take an exam and pass your nursing exam so that you can then become a nurse. Why would they want you to do that? Because you could kill somebody. They want to be sure that when you're taking care of people that you're doing it the right way and that you have been tested on all these things. And being a nurse is a tough job. And you have to know a lot to be a nurse. And I know this because I'm married to a nurse. So I have some context here when it comes to nursing. So if you, plus it's always great to have a nurse in the house. I love this idea, by the way. It's a win-win. How she puts up with this, I have no idea, but here we are. You can skip A plus though. Unlike a nurse that can't skip nursing. If you want to work as a nurse, you have to pass that exam. If you want to be a lawyer, you have to pass the bar exam. There's no way around that. You can't be in a state and have any type of legal work as a lawyer without passing the bar. So unlike nursing and unlike being a doctor, unlike going into law, with IT, these certifications are not a requirement for you, but they sure help a lot. They can help you build a foundation. Knowing about Windows, Mac OS, and Linux is an important foundation for practically everything else you will be doing in IT. And I'm speaking as someone who worked in IT a large number of years, and at the end of it was working for a next generation firewall company. And you would think next generation firewalls, what do you need to know about Windows? Really? What do you need to know about Linux? Really? For a next generation firewall company? Turns out everything. You need to have a solid foundation in those operating systems because you will be integrating with those operating systems. You will be installing VPN software to get to work in those operating systems. You will be integrating a Windows Active Directory infrastructure into a firewall so that you could create firewall rules that say if you're part of the accounting department, you can do this, but if you're a part of shipping and receiving, you cannot do that. Now, how do you integrate into a Microsoft Windows Active Directory infrastructure? It's a relatively complex thing to hook into. So you have to understand how it works. You have to understand how to install all of those, integrate into Windows. Even though the firewall that you have does not run in Windows, you have to link those things together. So it's a really good example of where skipping over a set of information and you think, when am I ever I know how to log into a computer. I'm good. Are you ever going to use that again? Turns out you'll be using it for the rest of your career. I often speak of getting my Microsoft MCSE, the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineering certification. Back in the day, there was a certification from Microsoft that practically every employer wanted you to have, the MCSE. And it was a series of 6 different certifications you needed to earn. And once you had all 6 of those, they were rolled up into and called the Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer. A big emphasis of that was Windows Server and Active Directory. And going through that process of earning that certification and working through the technical challenges of that certification and learning about Windows and learning about the internals of Windows and learning about Active Directory and accessing Active Directory databases and what you would store in Active Directory and how you work with AD, all of those things I thought at the time were interesting to learn, and they did help me in the moment with doing things very similar to what I was just describing with the next-gen firewall. But as I got through my career, that was a number of years ago. That was so long ago, I'm not even going to tell you how long ago that was. But the idea and the concept of Active Directory really hasn't changed since then. So I learned it one time back when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And I've been able to retain and use that knowledge effectively without any changes. The base of Active Directory has not changed in that time frame. And I'm able to use that and apply it towards different functionality and different usability as technology has changed, as the industry has changed, as new products have come along, as new next generation technologies have been created and integrated into Microsoft. And when I sat down in that training at Palo Alto Networks and they said, we're going to integrate with Active Directory, already in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I know how we're going to do that. We need to have a hook that goes right into the Active Directory database. Let's use LDAP. We'll set the right permissions for that. I know exactly where the LDAP settings are. We'll slide it into that. And now we're able to talk back and forth with those firewall rules. That was very, very useful. And it was a bit of knowledge, a foundational amount of knowledge that I got so long ago, but because I took that certification, whatever it is, A+, the Network Plus, the Microsoft, the Amazon, the Linux, whatever that certification was, that gives you information that you're able to use throughout the rest of your career. In the similar way, I think you have a pretty good strategy here for thinking about networking. Networking connects everything. Networking is all things to all operating systems. We don't have the internet or any connectivity or the cloud or even AI without some type of network. So getting network knowledge also gives you a solid foundation that you will be able to use the rest of your career. I'm Cisco certified. I've got certifications from other networking certifications that I've collected through the years. I've got Microsoft certs to go along with that. I got Linux certifications to go along with those. You collect those and build them, and now you're starting to put together quite a combination of things. Now you know operating systems a bit because you took the A+. Now you know networking because you took Network Plus or you took CCNA, and you build your foundations from there. Next step up would be security, or it would be cloud technologies, or it would be some AI stuff, whatever it happens to be. It would be big data, working with some of those. That's what we're doing when we talk about building on this level of foundational knowledge. So could you skip A+? You could. Are you missing out on something? You are. And it may be that you make up the missing knowledge in other ways, or maybe you eventually come back to the A+ and learn really what the A+ is teaching you. Also keep in mind that just because you're going through A+ course doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take the A+ exam. Sometimes people will go through my entire course with no intention of ever taking the exams, but they want the knowledge. Maybe they work somewhere that you don't need an A+. Maybe they're far enough in their career that earning an A+ certification is not a good return on their investment. Maybe they're looking at a higher level cert to go to their next step, but they still want that foundational knowledge. So I do see people doing that as well. So there might be some really good reasons for getting your A+, but there might also be really good reasons for not getting an A+. And I'm sensitive to both of those, and either one of those might be the right decision for your particular circumstance. So you have to look at what employers are asking of you. You have to look at what you want to do as a career, and then you'll get to make that decision as you go through it. Let's do some more questions that you have submitted. As always, you can submit questions at any time using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and we will sift through all of those questions. Let's go to another one on this list. I have a lot here. I talked a little bit about this in the previous study group we did, but I think we could probably talk a little bit more on it. This is a question from my very, very good friend and frequent question submitter, Anonymous. Anonymous asks, "Hello, Prof. Messer. I recently passed A+ and Network Plus, and I'm struggling with interviews. Do you have any advice on how to practice them? I tried answering questions alone. It doesn't really help with the pressure. I often feel when I fail a question, the interview is over. Thanks for everything that you do." Interviews are weird things. They are in a situation where you are brought into a room. You might as well have been arrested, and they brought you back to the police station, and they put you in a dark room with a chair on a side of this the table and another chair on that side of the table, and there's a light right on you, and they're asking you questions. It certainly feels that way when you go into some of these interviews. I've had great interviews before. I've had awful interviews before. And part of the interview process is more than just what you know. I think people really emphasize learning the answer to all the questions. We're technical people. We're built this way. Our brain is wired this way, that whenever somebody says, I have this funny problem with my mouse when I try to use it, you just want to jump right in. Oh, have you updated the drivers? Try updating the drivers. Hey, did you run a USB test on it? Maybe you should try a different USB port. Is it wireless? Have you changed we're immediately jumping in and trying to figure out why the mouse isn't working. When in reality, most of the time we should probably be just listening and thinking about what people are saying when they go through that process. That is, I think, one of the most valuable skills in an interview is the interpersonal conversational style of it. And I have found the interviews that I have done best on, perhaps not ironically, are the interviews where I really didn't have a huge care in getting that job. For whatever reason, I was in the room. Somebody really wanted me to sit in that interview. Somebody really recommended me for a particular position. Somebody really spent some time to get me in that room. I just didn't want to take the job. But it was a great opportunity to talk to someone, to learn about what they're doing. I never go into anything negatively. There's always an upside. You always learn something when you do an interview. It's always a learning experience, regardless of how many times you've gone to an interview, because there's always a curveball thrown in there. And sometimes it's about what you do in the interview. Sometimes it's about the person interviewing you who makes it difficult. But I find that the more conversational you can be in an interview and the more stories you have to tell, the better it goes. And that's why I often tell people, don't worry so much on, do you know the answer to every question? Now, obviously, if it's a technical interview and they're trying to determine if you know enough to get the job, that's a little bit different. But most first interviews are to really check you out and see how well you would work with the people that are there already. And so when I go to those types of interviews, and I've said this, there's a link, a YouTube video linked into the YouTube video description of this video, which is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And in that it's a 30-minute video. For those of you that have watched my videos before, you know most of my training videos are 5 to 10 minutes long. This is a 30-minute video made effectively in the same vein as my other videos. So there's a lot of content in that 30 minutes. We don't mess around. We don't joke around in my videos, because I know a lot of you are watching these over and over and over again. That's one of the reasons I don't use a lot of jokey joke outward humor. Most of it's on the screen behind me. But that's one of those where it's very important that you are able to really understand how to communicate with somebody. And so I like to use stories to be able to do that. I think technical people generally have not been put in a position where they've had to do a lot of public speaking before. And an interview sort of is a public speaking situation. I think that's why a lot of people get nervous over it. Like, oh, I have to talk to somebody today. Can't we just email? Wouldn't it be easier? Nope, we have to talk. We have to actually look each other in the eye and communicate to each other. And so when people ask a question about, here's a typical interview question. Tell us about a time where you've had to solve a technical problem, and what process did you go through to solve that particular problem? All right, well, there's a story there somewhere. Now, you probably have already an answer set up. Well, one time I had to fix an issue, and I did this, and I went to Google, and we did that one, and we were done. Not a great story. But if you had a much bigger story, and one that had sort of an ending to it, then you would be in a much better place with that interview. It's a place where you can actually start a conversation. One of the ways that we do that, one of the things I recommend in my video, How to Get a Job in IT with No Experience, is I want you to have some labs already done. I want you to have a home lab. You need home labs to be able to do this. There needs to be some type of technical thing that you've set up. Have you built your own Windows server at home with Active Directory and worked with Active Directory? Why not? Have you installed a firewall, built maybe an open source firewall that has all these fancy features and capabilities, and put it onto your network just to see how many people are trying to attack your network from the outside? Now, that's a great story. I think the one on Active Directory is a really good one because it gives me a great story, because when you're installing Active Directory, it's not going to work the first time you put it on. In fact, you'll probably run into multiple stumbling blocks during the installation process or the integration process of Active Directory, and you will need to solve these problems. When we're in the moment, we often forget about documenting what we're seeing. An error came up. Let me Google the error. Oh, it said to change a configuration file. I just changed the file. Let's reboot. Did it fix it? Hey, it fixed it. Great. Now, what was that error again? Well, you missed an opportunity to document this. You should have documented the error. You should have documented the process you went through to find the resolution for this error. You should have documented what you did based on those recommendations, and you should have documented what the results were, which effectively fixes or addresses the question that they asked you about. Tell us about a problem you had or you solved the problem, and what did you do to solve the problem? There's your answer. Oh, I have a great one. I'm glad you asked that. I just ran into this. I just installed Windows Server in my home lab. That's what you just started with. Well, we use Windows Server here. Oh, do you? Well, guess what? Everybody uses Windows Server. So immediately, say what? You did what in your home lab? You installed Windows Server? Yeah. Well, I wanted to test and work with Active Directory more, so I installed Windows Server in my home lab. Already you got some street cred. Next, you could say, and I ran into this issue during the installation. Blah, 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 blah. Had no idea what that was referring to. Never installed Windows before. Another example of you admitting, I don't know everything, because, by the way, nobody knows everything. Every single technical person you ever run into is constantly Googling. We're constantly asking others, have you run into this before? You're constantly calling somebody else in your organization. Hey, I ran into this weird thing. Have you seen that? There's a technical networking piece of this, people networking, that is an important aspect. But you get to explain, I'd never seen that before. Jumped into it. I Googled the message. Here's the information it gave us. And I thought, let's see if that's really going to work. I modified this file, and here's the results of that. So in reality, it took me about an hour. We stepped through each piece of this. We broke down the problems. We addressed each issue individually. We put in a plan for resolving the problem. We implemented that change, rebooted the system, and it solved the issue. That is something very common. And even if you do it, let's take another scenario. Let's say you installed that open source firewall and you plugged it into your actual internet connection. Well, now you have a big log file of every attack that came into your network. And these next generation or even open source firewalls have reporting built into them. You could create a report, have it run up for an hour on your network, and have it create a report of how many attacks the IPS functionality or the security functionality of that device was able to identify. Oh, it will find some. Do not worry. In fact, that's a great story to bring to your interview. I just ran into that this weekend. I saw an error message pop up. I saw something in the log of my firewall that I just installed. I took an open source firewall and just for fun plugged it into my internet connection because I wanted to know how many attacks would I get in an hour by just plugging in a brand new device to the network. Care to take a guess? You can have a little game in the middle of your interview. We'll do closest to the pin. How many do you think I saw? 5,000. How many do you think I saw? 50,000. How many do you think I saw? 1,000,000. Well, here's a report. Zoop. Now you've got a report you wrote from a firewall that you installed in your home lab. These are very impressive things for somebody interviewing you to see. And I'm saying this as someone who interviewed a lot of people for a technical role. As a systems engineering manager, I had to do interviews with folks. Some people would just show up with nothing. Tell me about a time you solved a problem. Well, I don't know. Problems happen all the time. Okay. Next on our list, tell me about what you know about ARP. ARP, yeah. I don't know. We used ARP. I think I used it in my last job, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming in. that you don't want to be that person. You want to be somebody with a story. You need to have a story for all of these. So I like for people to walk in with 3 or 4 of these stories so that they can kind of present a real world of this particular, of you, a real world example of the things you have done, and kind of moves you up in a little bit more into somebody who's a thinker about these problems, and not for nothing, pretty good communicator. You're able to tell somebody about this story. This might take some practice. You obviously need to have this stuff ready before you walk in the room. You would have needed to have the home lab. You would have needed to run through these processes. You would have needed to create these reports. You would need to have those numbers ready. And closest to the pin, 50,000 you won. It was 49,430 or whatever it was. You've got a number, and it's just kind of funny to think about it. And it's kind of interesting to have a practical, real-world cybersecurity situation that in many ways duplicates the network that they have. Their network and this massively large, multi-billion-dollar conglomeration of a company connects to the same network, the internet, that you do. So they have the same problems that you do. And being able to show it on your network, they can absolutely feel the pain because they're dealing with the same thing on their network. So that's the situation you're going to run into, is needing to prove yourself, needing to communicate how well you know this knowledge, and being able to position yourself above anyone else who's coming in for those interviews. It's a combination of things. It's not just any one thing, but those are the types of things that can really help you during these interviews. I'll also say, because you did mention Mr. Anonymous, Mrs. Anonymous, whichever, I often feel when I fail a question, the interview is over. Well, if that's the case, all of my interviews would be over pretty soon, because you're going to be asked questions all the time as a technical person that you just don't know the answer to. Somebody will say, well, we just set up a new Proxmox server and we were running into this challenge with getting that running, and here's the message we saw. What do you think that was? Well, I don't know. I've never set up a Proxmox server before. That would be interesting. Let's set up one of those as my home lab. But if I had to guess, I would say blah, 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 blah. You've now just positioned yourself as someone never touched it, don't know about it. You're not fooling anybody if you try to do it the other way. Oh yeah, I install Proxmox all the time. I got 10 of them at home. You can't lie in the middle of an interview. We can smell it. We know that you're lying. I've asked direct questions to somebody about something that they absolutely should have known about, and they absolutely lied to me about their knowledge. And we just know immediately when it happened. But you can say, haven't worked with that before. Sounds great. And I think I'd like to know more. But if I had to guess, and then you go down that road, you've already positioned yourself as somebody who's open to the idea of researching it and learning more about it. But you're also talking about using your existing foundational knowledge and applying it towards a technology you perhaps haven't seen before. And you get to say, if I had to guess, which means even if everything else you say is wrong, you are still stepping through the normal process that you follow when troubleshooting these types of problems. So you're giving, because you're going to see this every day. You're going to have messages pop up every day that you've never seen before. You're going to be in meetings all the time where people are asking you questions about things you just don't know. So make sure that you position yourself in an interview situation with honesty that never touched it before, never seen it. Nope. But given the information you've told me before and what I already know very broadly about the Proxmox servers, here's what I would do to try to address that. That is a much better approach in an interview than trying to go, oh, yes, let's try to write this on a whiteboard. Let's do a box and then maybe a triangle, and we'll connect those with a line. That solves the problem, doesn't it? You're just digging a hole at that point. Don't try to fake your way through an interview. There's that horrible phrase that I constantly hear, you fake it till you make it. Oh, no. No. How about be honest till you make it? It's a much better way to go. You feel a lot better about the interview, and you're telling somebody straight up, well, that's just something I don't know. If that's not a love connection, if that's not something, if that's a a deal breaker and I won't get the job because I don't have Proxmox knowledge, that's fine. At least I know why I didn't get the job. And you are getting somebody probably who has more knowledge in that particular area than me. I will find the one that fits best with me. This is as much you dating them as them dating you. You have to find the right place to go. And I'm speaking as someone who has made some very, very questionable career decisions. I'm trying to impart a little bit of my pain. If I could show you the scars, I would. But I've made horrible decisions in my career. And so it ultimately means that 9 months to a year after you've made that horrible decision, you're now moving to another company because you didn't do the proper due diligence at the beginning. Had I really paid attention to the red flags, had I really had the knowledge that I do now, I would have definitely not gone that direction. Now, ultimately, it worked out. We're okay. Nobody suffered too badly, other than my ego over the whole thing. But it gives you at least a way to be honest with a company so that they can be honest back to you. And the moment they sniff that you're going to give them a story about something that you know or don't know, it's off. Don't do that. You're in a much worse position. And this is about position. An interview is about you looking better than anyone else who walks in the door. You don't know. And the worst part is you don't know the competition. You don't know who you're fighting against. You don't know what's good and bad. And there's no way to put every individual on the same bar for measuring. Because this person who walks in has a completely different background than you do. I can't compare you based on the college degrees that you have. I can't compare you on your technical knowledge because you have a different technical knowledge. Maybe we compare a little bit based on personality and your knowledge and how you go about troubleshooting things. But you have to also trust in the process that the people interviewing you are being honest about the position. Because if they're not, you're going to be able to tell immediately anyway. I've walked into some interviews where they were just a little too sketchy. They were kind of dancing around different things. And when you ask a very specific question about, oh, tell me about, the day-to-day for this particular person. What does this particular job role, what do you see their day-to-day looking like? A pretty good question. And one that's that's always a good go-to. When do you have any questions about this? Sure, absolutely. Give me an idea on a normal day. What's this like? What would that particular job role look like? And if they start to go, well, it's different a lot because we work a lot with this maybe, but sort of sometimes not. And that's what it's like. I might have made a bad decision about coming into this interview, other than getting more interview practice. But that at least gives you, there's a little red flag. So, oh, look at this. Suddenly a red flag showed up. Let me stick that in my pocket. And we'll look at that red flag later. And eventually, if you end up coming out of the interview with, look at all these red flags I have, what is that about? Then you know perhaps that's somewhere you shouldn't be. My problem is a red flag went by and I thought, wonder what that was. I wonder what that red thing was that just went by when they mentioned that. I was oblivious. But if you pay attention and you really take notes and you really write those things down, I think you'll be in a much better place from an interview perspective. I think I droned on a lot about interviews there, but hopefully that answered your question, Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous, about going into that interview and how you should position yourself. There's a difference between being smart and being confident. You can be confident and not know everything. But if you're smart, you come in as smart and you don't know everything, you're already a disadvantage because, by the way, you don't know everything. Being confident enough to say, I don't know everything, but I know what we can do to find the solution. That's what your employer wants to hear. They already know you don't know everything. Surprise, they already know this. So position yourself as somebody, I don't know what that is, but I know how to fix it. I know who to call. I know who can assist. I know who's smarter than me on that particular topic. Let's pull them in because then they'll make me smarter for the next time that comes around. That's what we want to hear from people. This is team. This is a team. There is no you in team or something like that. There's no I in you. There's no team in teaming. Figure out the thing that positions you best working with everybody in the organization, and you will be seen as someone more marketable, someone more hireable than somebody who insists that they are the smartest one in the room. You should hire me because I'm super smart. And if you haven't seen already and looked at my paper, look at this paper. Look how smart I am. That's why you should hire me. No, they don't want to hire that person. They want somebody who understands their limitations and then knows what to do to improve on those. That's a much better position. At least it was in the interviews that I either participated in as an interviewer or walked in as an interviewee. And more power to you. The interviewing process is a challenge. Now it's more about, you have to even sit in front of a camera now. Now we didn't do a lot of video interviews back in the day. Now it's nothing but video interviews. Sometimes not even with people, which I have very strong feelings about. But I think that knowing how to talk to the camera isn't very often just as important as how to look somebody in the eye. Both are scary, granted, but it takes practice. You will get better at that. You just have to practice a lot. I practiced a lot. There was somebody earlier that mentioned, how come you don't stutter in your videos? Oh, no, sir. You just don't see me stutter. That's the beauty of video editing. The number of problems I've had walking through a video. By the time you've seen it, I've already said it 3 times. Sometimes I'll make it through in the first run, but rarely. And sometimes I'll think about what I just said and I thought, I really want to tell it to you in a different way, or I want to explain this in a way that's clear, or I need to break it down differently. Sometimes we do that on the fly too. So get the foundations in place, get the communication skills in place, and then you just have a conversation with anybody. That's the real key. It's easier than you might think. It's a lot easier than you might think. They don't tell you that part. They just tell you, isn't it hard to talk to people? Yes, it is. Too bad. Well, in fact, if you just work on it a little bit, it actually works out pretty well. And you get where you can do almost anything in an interview process. Let's now find some a different topic. I know I'm past the top of the hour. Let's get another question in then. Since we're here, since the stream is up and running and it works pretty good, let's see what we can find. Okay, this is good. I like these. Speaking of interviews, here's another good one from my good friend Anonymous that says, I asked this recruiter, what is the requirement for an IT trainee position? And they said, extensive work experience or a master's degree. And rightly, Anonymous says, all that for a trainee position? Why did they stop there? Why didn't they ask for a PhD? Why didn't they ask for some type of blood work? How come they didn't ask you to paint a picture? What type of ridiculous requirement for an IT trainee position is extensive work experience or a master's degree? I literally need a red flag that will just pop up on the screen and dance across when we talk about these things. Whenever you have first a recruiter, questionable already, it's so hard to find a good recruiter. It is so hard to find a good recruiter. Did I mention how hard it was to find a good recruiter? When you find a good one, you stick with them. I worked with 2, maybe 3 in my career that were extremely helpful, that were knowledgeable in the industry. They had contacts in the industry. At that point, though, I was really up at a higher echelon of my career. I already worked a number of years in the industry, and I was already up at the senior systems engineer level. So it was a discerning group at that point. Finding smart people who could apply those skills across different technologies, there weren't a lot of them, or there are not a lot of them. And so recruiters were essential that were well-known, that we'd work with for years, because they could find those particular very niche jobs and bring them back to you and say, is this something you'd be interested in? If you run into a recruiter and you're wondering, is this a good recruiter? The way that you tell is you ask them about an IT trainee position, and they tell you that you need extensive work experience or a master's degree, both of which do not apply to a trainee position because you're getting trained. I don't understand the idea of a master's degree either in the world of IT. We barely need a college degree. it certainly helps. I think a lot of employers prefer you to have a 4-year degree. If you look at the job postings that I've seen, employers are still asking for 4-year degrees. The value of a college degree today versus the value of a college degree 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I guess we can have an argument and conversation about what that value would be. But from the employer's perspective, it still has value. So if you look at that video, in fact, I did on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I talk about 4 important elements that you should bring to the table when you're getting this job. The first one is a formal degree, not a master's degree, not a PhD, not multiple degree. In fact, it doesn't necessarily even have to be a technical degree, although it would be nice if it was. But I don't have a technical degree. I have a business management degree, something I used not a bit until I finally opened my own business, and that was well into my career. Throughout IT, I really didn't use much of that degree, but it was a 4-year degree. As many employers will tell you, a formal degree, does it prove that you know something? I guess it sort of does, but more importantly for the hiring manager, it proves that you're trainable. And proves you're trainable over an extended period of time, because that's what college is. They are effectively training you for that particular part of what your major happens to be. In my case, business management. So I took classes on accounting. I took classes on personnel management. I took classes on what was at the time called management information systems, which is information technology type stuff. Took classes on other business. I took marketing classes, so it was very broad in its perspective. So I got a lot of business type classes when I got that degree. Not much in computing, but as it turns out, it's more important that you know the technical content. I worked with people that had my position. So I was in a company with maybe there was 100 systems engineers. Some of them had an engineering degree. I started as an engineering degree and quite honestly wasn't smart enough for that. So whenever the business school, which I think it might have been, I think I might have been swayed by the marketing folks, because at the business school, the marketing girls were a draw. Engineering school, okay, we can have that conversation. But got in the business school and it worked out fine. I've worked with people that had economics degrees. I've worked with people that had a liberal arts degree, like literature and history. All of us doing the same job. Just because you have a 4-year degree that's not in technology doesn't mean that you can't be a good technologist. So that's an important consideration too. That was the first element. The second element of the 4 is industry certifications. Not to replace the first element, to go along with it. Employers want you to have that 4-year degree, but they also want you to have an industry certification or more than one industry certification. A formal degree does not replace an industry certification. An industry certification does not replace a degree. That is a common misnomer that comes up all the time in our Discord, on the internet, in our classes, on our live streams. These aren't things you can swap in and out. All right, how many certifications for a 2-year degree? We need 4? We'll just switch those out. We'll switch out. No, you can't do that. That's not how it works. You need both of them, and you need to bring both of them to the table. They teach you different things. They apply in a different way. They give you knowledge in a different way. The third that I tell people is you need some type of practical experience. That's your third element. Practical experience doesn't necessarily mean professional experience. And I define that as someone you're getting paid to do that particular job. But having some type of professional experience is different. You're getting paid. That's something you kind of put on a resume. But if you have some practical experience, it may be that you were volunteering at your church to keep their systems updated and up and running, and you addressed any minor problems that came up. So you checked and made sure their antivirus was up to date. If they had run into a problem with the printer, you were able to get it fixed. If they had an issue with their mouse, you got a replacement for them. You effectively became their IT folks. And that is a great practical experience. You can bring that to an interview and tell people, well, that's what our guys do all the time. Just here in the building. You did it, but you were there. So that's a great thing to bring to the table. The fourth element, and I don't want to say that it's more important or better than the others, but it's probably just as important, is you know someone who works there. This is not that's an element for some reason that we don't emphasize enough. If anything, we look down on it. Oh, you just got the job because you knew somebody that worked there. Yeah, I got the job because I knew someone who worked here. That helps. They know you. You're not a stranger walking in from off the street. Maybe it's somebody you know from the Microsoft user group meeting you go to. Maybe you met them at an industry trade show. Maybe they're part of a completely different group. Maybe you golf with them. Maybe they're at your church. You're just an acquaintance. We're not talking about going to their children's birthday parties. You know them professionally. You know their name. You've met them. You've talked to them 1 or 2 times. You know who they are. And that's why you can maybe talk to them about, oh, I'm good to see you again. Hey, I'm looking for a position, an entry-level position in IT. I know you work over at that big building that's off the interstate. Do you guys have jobs out there? Do you have a help desk or something? And most of the time, they will ask you for your resume so they can give it to HR because they have a program internal within their company to recruit people internally without going out to third-party recruiters, which are super expensive. So the employee hiring program that they have might give the employee a bonus if you get hired and you stay on for 30, 60, 90 days or whatever it happens to be. So knowing someone who works there can be super useful because you are a familiar and perhaps even more importantly, a known quantity. They know that you're in the area. They know that you've been here for a while. Somebody knows you. Maybe we can trust you to actually show up to the job, to have knowledge. You've already obviously been working in the industry because you've been to these Microsoft user group meetings or trade meetings or whatever it happens to be. We like hiring people that we know or that someone in our organization knows because they will be much more valuable or at least have a better chance to be a valuable employee than somebody random off the street. Now, statistically, is that true? I have no idea, but mentally it's true. So that is perhaps in that particular case more important than statistically if a stranger off the street's a better employee than somebody you know. I think there's a good argument to be had there, and we can certainly have one of those. But that's another situation where if you're somebody who is really focusing on the network, they're focusing on the computer or they're focusing on the security or whatever it happens to be, it's good if you know who that is and where we go with that. I think if you're somebody working in the industry, you're probably already familiar with this and being able to work through it. I was going to bring up something and show it to you on the screen. And quite literally, I can't even believe I didn't get a message about this. Quite literally, my keyboard died just as I was trying. Oh, the light just came on. So we fixed it. It was a percussive fix. We were able to manage and get it back up and running through the use of percussive diagnostics. And it seems to have worked. We got that. Hey, that is one where I have a feeling I'm going to need another keyboard here shortly. We'll have to work through that. So some of you have already seen. I mean, you can't even see most of the letters anymore. This is usually the state that my keyboard is in just before we have to swap it out. That is something, isn't it? It is well worn. I don't eat in here, so I don't know where all this dust and stuff came from, but there's obviously something that has managed to get itself into the crevices sometime during that particular time frame. Hopefully that's giving you a perspective. If you're talking to a recruiter and they say, yes, you need a ridiculous amount of experience and this ridiculous degree to be able to do an entry-level position, find a different recruiter. That probably was the answer I probably should have originally given. It would have been much shorter, wouldn't it? Could have gone that way. How are we on time? I've talked way too much. I want to see if there's one more there because I'm hanging in there to make that happen. Ooh. This is actually a good one from Moises. So Moises coming off the top rope, dude. This is a good question, which I'm not supposed to say. but I said it anyway. Moises says, Professor Messer, if you were starting over today with no IT experience and you wanted to become a data center technician, entry-level IT, help desk service, in my particular case, remote service technician, that's a job right there. Remote service technician in South Florida, you learn fast. As quickly as possible, what would your study plan look like after earning the A+? Ooh. Okay, I had to start over. No IT experience. Nothing. I can probably answer this one pretty well because I started out, as all people do in this industry, with no IT experience. So I am personally very qualified to answer this question. When I got out of, when I was in college, I will say first off, before mentioning my specific environment, my specific history, looking at this question, what would my study plan look like after earning the A+? I think I would go back to a lot of things I've already said today. Having a home lab is incredibly important. It's more important than we even tend to make a point of in this industry. This gives you some practical experience, and it gives you a platform that you can speak on. If you've never installed Active Directory, how are you supposed to speak of using it with any type of confidence? If you've never installed a firewall and watched the traffic going through and looked at the alarms that come up and sifted through the logs, how are you supposed to speak about that with any type of confidence? You have to have some type of experience with this to be able to then talk about it. So home labs are incredibly important. When I was in high school, we really didn't. Most people didn't have computers at home because that's just the history of when I started in this industry where I came from. That's just what happened where we were as far as computing was there. A lot of schools had computers though, just because the funding was there, and computers weren't really a home computer thing unless you had a specific reason to have a home computer. The very first computer we had in our home was one my dad used primarily for spreadsheets. He was an accountant. He did accounting type work for the state of Florida. And he just had a ton of spreadsheets that he'd work on. It was from K-Pro. It was a CPM machine. I wish I could find a picture of this. I think it was a K-Pro 2, as I recall. It is a K-Pro 2. And it, without making myself look ridiculous, it looked like this. So there you go. First computer I ever worked on at home. At school, we had TRS-80s. We had the older style, basically same thing, but from Radio Shack. Radio Shack was huge in computing, enormous in computing. And I think the Model 3 was probably the one that had the best or the largest implementation at a high school level. Anyway, so in our high school, this is one of the first computers I really spent a lot of time on, did a lot of basic programming, figured out the commands to use the operating system, had the ability to save information to, in this case, floppy drives, which were a luxury. Most of the ones we had at school did not have floppy drives. We start off with tape drives, quite literally cassette tapes. I know you don't even know what I'm talking about, but that's ask your parents. Cassette tapes is what we would use for those. But it gave me a foundation in computing and working with these technologies and being able to run them and being able to understand them and having at least a perspective of what was there. So having that hands-on, that's an important part. If I had to start anew with no IT experience, getting some type of hands-on is important. I leveraged that hands-on when I went to college and worked in a computing center. So they would hire students to work a shift in their computing center as an operator. This was the lowest of lowest jobs you could have for a mainframe. This is literally what you do as an operator. There would be a screen in front of you, a lot like what I'm doing here. There'd be a screen in front of you, and this is what you would do. Okay, is it still running? It's still running. Okay, let's see what happens. Or is it still running? It is still running. Everything is still running. I don't have to call anybody. Oh, wait. That clock just stopped. It's not running anymore. Let me call somebody. Hi. It's not working. It stopped. Clock stopped. What's that? Push the big start button. Okay. Click. Hey, it's working again. Okay, thanks. That was my job. That was what I did. Now, occasionally I'd have to pull things off the printer or I'd have to mount a tape. But that you're a babysitter. You're babysitting the computer and you weren't even fixing the computer. They didn't trust you to touch the computer. They trusted you to watch it. And if it breaks, to call somebody else who would then fix the computer. But you know me, every time they would come in to work on the computer, I'd be right on top of them. What are you doing? What are you typing in there? What's going on? How's that? Oh, okay. Oh, I'll know what that means. All right. You're typing too fast. You're going, wait, can you slow down? I can't. All right. Caught that. All right. Oh, it's working. All right. See you later. See you next time. So you try to catch as much as you can from the smart people that were coming in and then leaving very quickly. They don't have time to explain this to you. It's not your job to know anyway, but it's a place where you can kind of soak in a little more of what's happening there. So having that job was great. Understanding more about large scale computing, how it was all connected. Because you had so much downtime, I got to study a lot. You wouldn't know it looking at my grades, but I did. I tried. But you also got to learn a lot about the systems because all the documentation was there. Even though it wasn't your job, I grabbed the book, opened it up, and just start reading about it. And it would show me, oh, here's what you do. There's a command they never told me about. Boom. Whoa, it worked. And we'd end up doing things on the console we weren't supposed to. Then we would get in trouble and get a phone call from my boss. Stop doing that. We've got a log of you typing these things in. Like, of course I will not do that again. What do I do the next time I go in? Of course I do it again. I wanted to see more. Let's take it the next step. They didn't fire me, so we'll keep doing this. So eventually they did decide, look, you got to stop doing that, but we'll show you these other things that you could do. They realized there was a need to get people more knowledgeable, and having college students sitting around idle was just a horrible idea, just a bad plan. So they were smart enough not to do that anymore. The idea of working with equipment and becoming familiar with it and just diving into it and treating technology like a hobby is an important part of this. So I think that's what I would do again. If I were starting over with no IT experience, I would jump into it and just drink as much as I could. I mean that like knowledge-wise, not actual drinking as much as I can. Just learning as much as I can because there's so much. You can't drink it all. You can't know everything that's there. But I would try to learn as much as I could about all of those. And I think my strategy would probably be similar to the way that it worked out. I want to learn everything about the foundational technologies, about the operating systems, about the hardware, about what's inside the computer, about what makes it tick, about the software that drives that hardware, and learning as much as I could about it. Because once you know that, you can connect it to the network and now look at the protocols going back and forth. The job I got, sort of the middle job that kind of propelled me through my career, was working for Network General and becoming a systems engineer for the Sniffer product line. As many of you know, the term sniffer sort of generically now means capturing packets from the network, but that name was created because there is a product called the Sniffer that you plug into the network that showed you all of the protocols going by. Wide area networks, local area networks, fiber-based, copper-based, amazing technology. And understanding things at a protocol level gives you a perspective of what's going on in the network that you simply can't get anywhere else. It is the ultimate truth because you see every packet, you see the timestamps, you see what's being sent, you see what's being received, and you know immediately where the delays happen to be. No question there. If you're ever trying to solve a problem, this is the reason that tech support will always tell you, we'll be glad to have a look. Do you have a packet capture? Because they know the packet capture has the solution inside of it. You just have to find somebody who knows how to read it. And if you can be that person, you now have a different perspective on the world, a better perspective, a more knowledgeable perspective of the world, because now you really get to see exactly what's going on. It's like a nurse reading a 12-lead EKG. They know exactly what your heart looks like. They know where it's deficient. They know where it's working well just by looking at these squiggly lines on a page. Similar idea. You're in the matrix. It's just stuff going by that looks like nonsense to everybody else, but you really see it. You really know what's going on. Those two things together, once you know the operating systems and the internals, and you become somewhat expert in these different operating systems, Mac OS, Windows, Linux, then you're able to understand the network at a packet level, which of course allows you to build out your knowledge of networking. You can then design networks in a more intelligent way. You know how all of these devices communicate to each other. You immediately understand the difference between a switch and a router and an access point because you know how they work on the network. That's an important foundation because that allows you then to secure all of those things. How can you get into IT security without knowing how the operating system works? How can you get into IT security without knowing how the protocols interact together? There's probably as much networking in IT security as there is security in IT security. So unless you have that solid network foundation, which of course builds on the foundation that you made with operating systems, then you're not going to be able to excel in the world of security. That's an important part of this. Take, for example, a next generation firewall. How do you even plug it into the network? Do you install it in a layer 3 mode, in a layer 2 mode, or is it a virtual wire layer 1 mode? How do you even know the difference between all of those unless you have a foundational knowledge in networking? Once you have that, now we need two of them. Are they going to be in an active passive configuration or an active active configuration? Both of those are doable, but they have a completely different way to engineer the connectivity, the routing tables, how traffic flows, and many other aspects. And then once you have that, how do you integrate it with the rest of the network? We got to have it integrate into your switches. What about your wide area network? Are there different protocols, routing protocols coming in from the wide area network that we need to redistribute into different routing protocols in the inside of your network? So far, all of those things I've talked about have nothing to do with security. They're all networking questions, and we haven't even gotten to IPsec or site-to-site or client-to-site VPN connectivity or any of the other aspects of firewalls and computers and networking and security. It's a challenge to put all of these pieces together, and that's why there's so few people out there doing it because it is such a challenge. You have to move up. You have to build up into that level. You have to level up to get into that level of a job. You can't just jump into IT security. Can't do it. That's not going to work for you. There's really very few, if any, entry-level IT security jobs. I'm not talking about a SOC, a security operations center, and you answering phones and doing triage. That is an interesting first-level help desk type position, but it's not technically a security position. But at least you're learning the terms and the nomenclature at that level. But you're not ready to be a full-blown security analyst at that point. It takes much more to finally get you to that point and understand the deals of it. So I think if you're somebody who is wanting to become a data center technician or any type of IT position, an entry-level IT position, that could be a field service technician, an in-house help desk, a security operations center, a network operations center, or any other entry-level position, I think my study plan would be get an industry certification like A+. I think a networking certification is going to be key for everything else you do in your career. So a Network Plus, maybe CCNA if you really want a challenge. Maybe that's a little too much to begin with, but a lot of people do CCNA to start with. Maybe they know they're going to get into networking and they go that direction. That's an important piece of that too, to know the network level. And after that, it would probably be focusing on niches, maybe individual type of knowledge. Maybe you become an expert in, maybe your organization runs a Proxmox server. You need to be the Proxmox expert. Maybe your organization does a lot with IPsec VPNs. You become the IPsec VPN expert. So it allows you to kind of narrow your focus down one single area, and then you can effectively become the expert in that area. The benefit, of course, is that every other company in the world needs an expert in that area. That's a very common thing to see. So once you become an expert in that piece, you're now able to pick up that knowledge and go somewhere else and say, I'm really knowledgeable about this. If you need somebody who really knows this, you should hire me because this would be great. I could do this for you right away. You'd be good. That's where this comes in. Once you start building the foundation, you start getting more leverage. You start getting more options. Now you get to decide what type of job you want and where you want that job to be. Kind of hard to do that starting out. So you do have to keep learning. This is an industry where you will never stop learning. You will never stop seeing things you've never seen before because every day you'll get something new. Well, haven't seen that one before. There's a lot of things that you will see that is kind of normal. And we don't think about those. It's the weird stuff that always sits with you where you're having to work that unusual problem and try to figure out, why can't I fix that issue? Why is that weird error coming up? I've never seen this before. Nobody else has ever seen it before. Now you're going to have to troubleshoot it. That's sort of the way that process works. The more of those you go through, the more comfortable you get with the unknown, and your fear of the unknown sort of works that way. I think that's a common thing to see in our industry, and it's a common thing that you'll probably end up working through regardless of what you ever end up in this particular industry. It's a constant learning process, and sometimes this industry will surprise you. I've just talked today about working for that next generation firewall company. I didn't go looking for that job. Somebody I knew called me and said, I'm going to go work here. You should work here too. I hadn't considered it. I didn't even know the job was out there. I didn't even know the company. I've never heard of them before. They weren't a public company. They were a private company just starting out. Okay, well, let's see what you liked them. And I trusted the person that called me. Like, if you're talking about them, they must be something. So let's go see what they got. And sure enough, they had it. They definitely had it because Palo Alto Networks now, obviously, a public company, one of the leaders in IT security. That took a very short period of time for them to take a brand new technology the world had never seen before, put it into the world's hands, and it just took off like a rocket. You don't see that happen very often, but it's something that can be very impressive when it does happen. Well, I think that's been a pretty good conversation today about IT and jobs and focus and understanding how to get started in this world and then where to go from there, because it never ends. It's always an interesting conversation. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you for being here in that first hour and being with us and answering questions and going through the thought process of exam Q&A. I almost like the second hour even better from my perspective because I like the questions you ask. I like the way you think about what's going on in the industry and what can we do to get from point A to point B to point C. It's going to be a series of questions you ask throughout your career, and it's kind of nice to go through some of those just to see what would we do in that scenario. What tips can we take away from this? What shiny little thing can we see on the ground, pick it up, and put it in our pocket? Because that can be the difference when you walk into that interview where you're trying to get that job or get a better job in the world of IT. Thanks so much for joining us. We enjoy these things so much. We're off, I think, until the week after next. Do we skip a week? I think we do. So we got a Network Plus study group coming up soon. If I was smart, I would go to www.professormesser.com/calendar, where you would be able to see the entire calendar for the month of June. And here it is. Indeed, we do skip a week. What in the world's going on there? But come on back on June the 18th as our Network Plus study group. We'll be able to look at and ask the same questions we did for Network Plus. And then on the 24th of June is our Security Plus study group. We'd love to have you join us for that one as well. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time on the A Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.